Superb. How's it going, by the way?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I'm actually sort of adjusting to the world going back to sort of normal.
Oh God, yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It is
It's
weird. I must
um,
admit, I've not been as hard hit by, the whole lockdown stuff as a lot of people because I'm quite indoorsy, not going out person
yes,
anyway.
likewise. I mean, the things like the isolation and whatnot are not really that big a deal
Yeah,
to me, to be
I'm exactly
honest.
the same. I do a lot of my socialising on the internet anyway, so it
Yes.
hasn't that hasn't been taken away from me. I've
Look,
missed cons, that has definitely been a thing, but
oh God, yeah, that has been big actually. I've
yeah.
missed the ones like like TF Nation.
Oh, I know. Well, a friend of mine from Belgium. I just got into, funnily enough, this time last year, I started talking to her,
Mhm.
and she goes to TF Nation every year. So we were
Yeah.
talking about, oh, let's go together, and of course, well, it is what
Well,
it is. I don't know if they've confirmed if it's going ahead or not this year, but I'm guessing it's
this year
not.
it's definitely not.
It's
This year
definitely
it's
not.
definitely not. They're playing it safe this year, which
Makes
is
sense, doesn't it?
the right decision.
Yeah,
I mean, they've handled it really well. They've handled it
they
really
have.
well. They've been doing things like, just to keep people ticking over, they've been doing like live streams, and they've been getting people who would normally be at the con, so like the actors, the writers, the artists, that kind of thing, to make appearances and whatever.
Yeah,
But my God, I mean, the social aspect of that con is huge.
it is, really is. Yeah, and of course, there's nothing they can do, is there?
Oh,
You
of
can't replicate.
course.
You can't replicate it.
What are
They
you
have
gonna
done
do?
wonderful things, but yeah, it's the same. Virtual cons just aren't the same either. For the same reasons.
Of course. I mean, I really appreciate the effort. I really appreciate the
Definitely,
effort, but
and it's nice to
it's
have like panels and talks and stuff like that. Those are wonderful. But as you said, the social aspect, even
right.
for me, who is not social,
Yeah.
that's the reason I go.
Well, I do know for a fact that TF Nation, and not just TF Nation, but cons like it, that cater to sort of similar interests, like the comic book kind of toy collecting, video game,
Yeah,
anime kind of communities. For a lot of people, they are the main social event. They are
definitely.
the big thing of the year.
Yeah,
So to not have them for what, 2 years running,
yeah,
really.
it is
Hopefully
alarming.
that's all it's going to be. Hopefully that's all it's going to be.
Please,
I mean, my
I
God.
don't think I can cope anymore.
No, it's a big thing. It's a big thing.
It
I mean,
is.
I'm going to see a couple of my friends who, ironically, I made at TF Nation like about 10 years ago when I first started going, but they're like best friends ever.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen them for a year, over a year now.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm going to go see them this weekend.
Oh,
So
lovely.
God, I can't wait.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Well, they're my little gaming group. We're all very sort of homebodies. We
Yeah.
like we don't like go on holiday or anything like that because it's not our thing. We
No, of
tend to
course.
stay home and drink some lovely wine and play video games and things. I mean,
I'm exactly the same. So yeah, you're obviously of my
of
ilk.
an ilk,
So I
yeah.
totally get it. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, what we left off, what we were doing was we were playing. Well, I was playing for them, Resident Evil 7 on the VR helmet.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's
I bet on VR it's something else,
I'll
isn't
tell
it?
you what, I never expected it to be what it is.
Mm.
It does something. It's very difficult to describe unless you've experienced it, but it does something to the lizard part of your brain. The
Yeah.
rational part when you're playing like a horror video game. That rational part of your brain that sort of like it allows you to go, oh it's scary, but there's always that separation. There's always that
Yeah.
part of you where, it's behind the screen, but however deep and dark and horrific it gets, it's fine, it's
Yeah,
okay,
it's not real. It's over there and I'm over here,
The
right? Yeah.
VR helmet does something where it removes that.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
I don't have a VR helmet, but it is you're kind of selling it to me
it
because yeah.
it's really, I mean, it's the kind of thing where I'd I'd actually experience it before you buy it because you might not like it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not nice. I will say that. Now it is a really weird experience. It makes you feel genuinely afraid.
Yeah. Oh God.
Like
Okay.
there's like I've never had it before in a horror video game where I've been like genuinely afraid to walk down that corridor or genuinely afraid to open a door. But that, It's just my friend Ray, he was watching me play it, and we got to like this main foyer area in the house where it's all set, and it's a relatively safe area. So he said, "Can I just have a look? Can you take off the helmet and let me have a look?" I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." And he put the helmet on, and he looked around for about 2 seconds, and then he went, "Nope," and took it off, and it's like, no. It's scary.
Yeah, it definitely is one of. Yeah, you're probably right about trying before you buy because it could be a bit too much.
Well,
Couldn't it?
my friend Tom, he is an ex-soldier and has quite severe PTSD as a result. And he
Yeah,
tried it for about he did it for about 5 minutes, and he was like, you know what, I've got to stop playing this.
yeah.
He said it's actually exciting my PTSD, and I'm like,
Wow, okay.
what?
That. Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. I mean, even playing a game can do that.
Yeah,
In a third person sense. So imagine
yeah.
immersing yourself in a first person sense is even more intense in that sense.
Well,
So wow.
what I find is I can only play it for like stints of about 10 to
Mm,
20 minutes
yeah.
because after that everything cramps up. You're so
Yeah.
tense. You're sort of like all crunched up in your seat. And when I've finished, when I've taken the VR helmet off, everything aches.
Yeah.
Everything aches because you're so tense, and it is a strange experience. I've never really had anything quite like it before.
Yeah. I kind of want to try it now. Yeah, but
Yeah,
maybe not. Maybe on someone else's,
yeah,
not on.
try it first because I mean it is a massively expensive system.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think Rob wanted to get one anyway because I think there were a couple of games, obviously not scary games, that I think he wanted to give it a go. So maybe,
Well,
yeah, if he does get one, I'll
it's a
just.
weird
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? Because I would have thought that they'd have capitalized massively on the VR helmet because it was a big push for the PS4,
Yeah.
but they don't really seem to have. It's certainly not much of a thing for the PS5 at the moment.
No, not at all. No, I don't think there are really that many games for the PS5. I don't know. Well, there are many games for PS5 at the
Not
moment in
many, not
general,
really.
aren't
Full
there?
stop, really. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a few high-profile games out at the moment, and of course there's the big problem that no one can get one. So,
Well, this is so we had this. So I was on a Discord server
uh-huh.
because Rob desperately wanted one.
Mm.
And he'd got a bonus from work. So I was like, okay. So I was on the Discord server, and every time like a new batch came into game or whatever, they put a message and alert on there.
Hmm.
And I tried for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it was just sheer dumb luck that I managed to get one from game on one of the.
Oh,
But it was like it is literally like gold dust. Within 2 minutes of the announcement, almost every single time all the consoles were sold,
yeah.
and I could get one.
Well, I've got my 500 quid up on the kitchen counter there. It's been there for a long time now,
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
and I'm
And it was
kind
just
of
literally because I worked from home and I was,
right.
in a position where I could drop everything and sit in a queue, while I was working because it was some spreadsheet task or whatever,
Right, right. Well,
But it was grueling.
it's been a pain. I'll be honest. I've got like a couple of friends who are looking out for me for whenever they go online, whenever anyone gets them in. But it's always sod's law. Whenever they go up, it's always like ridiculous times late in the
Yeah.
evening or early
Yeah,
in the
well, this was
morning.
it as well. It was always either, I mean, early in the morning wasn't a problem, but like 2 in the morning sometimes they do
Right,
it. It's like, well, who's okay? Obviously, people are awake at 2 in the morning, but I'm not
right.
one of
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm often at work. I'm often on the
Yeah,
overnight or whatever. So I
exactly. Yeah,
haven't been able to pick one up, unfortunately. And I've kind
yeah,
of given up for a bit now, because I've got bored of it. It's such a shame because there are some games I would just love to play. The remake of Demon Souls is huge. I've got it. It's
yeah.
over there, but it's just sat there because I
Just
haven't got the
waiting.
console. But that's the only one of those games, the sort of Dark Souls, Bloodborne
Yeah,
games that I haven't played. I never
yeah.
played the original because I was sort of out of video gaming when that came out.
To be
And
honest, the only thing that I was really excited for yet was the Final Fantasy VII Integrate that they're doing
oh yes,
because they brought Yuffie in and she's my favourite. So,
right,
or Yuffie
right,
actually, technically, isn't it? Now that they've got voice acting, but
of course. Did you play the remake?
I did.
Oh
I
wow,
really liked it. Actually, I
me
really enjoyed
too.
it.
I was shocked.
Yeah, I was considering all the things that were changed and all
Yeah.
the and it's quite significant things. I think what I liked about it is it clearly wasn't just a rehash,
Right. I mean,
and they did it in such a clever way.
that clever thing where it's called Final Fantasy VII Remake, and remake is part
Yeah.
of the title, and that actually makes loads of sense when you play it.
Yeah, exactly. The bit there where they make it very clear that this is another continuity, and you are not,
Right.
because I know some people got really annoyed with the things that are changed. It's like, but this isn't the same game, and
No.
that was brilliant because they could have just rehashed everything, the same story, the same plot points,
If they wanted
but
to.
yeah, and that's brave. I thought.
I
It was
thought
very
so
brave
too.
to
I
do
mean,
that.
it made it familiar and new at the same time. The way they expanded Midgar was
Oh, it was so
just...
cool. Actually,
Oh,
get to dig deep into the sub maps of Midgar and going. Oh, yeah,
my
I loved
God.
it. Absolutely loved it.
And the
I
way
mean,
they enhance like the politics of it all, where
yes,
you get to see all this upstairs downstairs thing. You get to see like the upper middle classes who live on the top of the plates, and you get to see the real like the lower classes
yeah.
underneath. And
And then when you actually get to the Shimmer building and you see the luxury of it, and all the way the obliviousness of it as
oh,
well, having spent all that time in both of those worlds,
I loved
and
it.
I thought it was absolutely magnificent. I really did.
Me
And even
too.
little things like so my favourite characters in the original game was the Turks.
Right, yes.
Loved the Turks. And I absolutely love in this game when they make it very clear that they are, and you always had that sense in the original game, but in this they make it very clear they are literally punch clock villains.
Right, yeah.
They take no joy in what they're doing. They're just doing it because they're paid to do it and they're good at it. But they
That's
don't
it.
really like doing it. And I just, the real sense of that came through is, yeah, I loved it. I will sing its
Yeah.
praises all day long.
Likewise. I was
Amazing.
shocked at how much I liked it
I
because
was.
like Final Fantasy VII, I imagine you're the same. That was an epoch making experience.
Oh, it was like the text in video gaming
Yeah,
for me. It's
yeah.
the game that made me love games. So,
Right.
yes,
I
definitely.
do. I mean, I haven't really got time to do it these days, but it is one of those video games I remember playing for weeks on end and just
Yeah.
not wanting to do anything else and it just occupying my mind so much and doing everything, like
Yep.
every
Yep.
little
Every little
corner
thing.
of the map.
And playing it multiple times. I must have played that game 10, maybe even 11 times, and every time I've played it in detail.
Yeah,
I've never just skimmed through it. I've always done the chocobo racing and
yeah.
all the stupid little things that you can do.
All the stuff at the gold
It.
saucer, like
Yeah.
the optional weapon bosses.
Yep. Oh, the first time I beat the ruby and emerald weapon was
Yeah, that's an achievement. That is
Yeah.
an achievement, that is, because you've
It
got like
was.
you can't do it normally. It's just
No.
not possible. Like most of the bosses you can kind of brute force, but those two you need to know how to do it. You need to
Yeah.
know the tricks and
And you
the
need to do the battle square, and then you need to do this and chocobo sub. So you need to grind all the sub games
yeah.
in order to get to just to get to a point where you can grind the boss. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
you've got to sub grind. It's brilliant.
You've got to work all your materia up to like the ultimate level
Yep, and
multiple
get some obscure
times.
materia from obscure places.
Cripes, it's mad.
Yeah.
It's mad. Although, I was watching, I've never done it myself, but I was watching a video by someone recently, and there is another way of doing the emerald weapon. And you use, it's luck, it's pure luck, but you've got to get the right roll on Kate Sith's roulette wheel.
Oh, okay.
And if
Because
you get it,
obviously the what do you call it? The underwater materia.
that's
That
it,
was
yeah.
that's the classic way of doing it. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's
Yes,
interesting.
that is, and if you get it, it kills it in one hit.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Can you imagine being that lucky? Can you imagine being that lucky, having Kate
that
Sith
would
in your
never
party
happen.
for a start?
Well, yeah. Who plays with Kate Sith? For a
Right.
start, yeah.
Although I was so happy when he turned up in the remake, just for that one scene. I just
Oh, yeah, because you obviously now that you know that he's basically Reeves, like his persona, isn't he? He's
Yeah.
literally his persona.
It totally is, yeah. It totally
Imagine being
is.
somebody who's played that game for the first time and seeing that out of context, you'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
What the hell is this? Why is there a little cat guy?"
Right, overlooking the destruction. What does that mean?
Yeah.
But they don't explain it,
No, they
in
don't.
the remake. They
It's
just
one of those things they just shove in there,
Yeah.
assuming that either you're a fan or you'll wait for the context.
You'll wait for whatever comes next. I mean, I must. It was a big seller. It was a big game. So I'd assume they are working on the next game in this series. But Mike, I don't even know. To be honest, I think all bets are off now.
I think so too. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to get in the next game, but I'm very excited.
I mean, like that ending as well. I mean, I did not expect Sephiroth to actually like turn up.
No, because he doesn't. I mean, at that point in the game, you literally just get flashbacks of him. You don't get him in person until I think Janon, isn't it, on the ship?
Well, and even that's not him, is it? That's Genova in
Sephiroth's
form. So like, you don't get to meet Sephiroth until it's when you reach the Promised Land.
Yeah, and he's in the crystal, isn't he? Yeah.
So,
which is like well into disc 2.
It is, isn't it? It's like, isn't that like right near the end of disc 2? Because it's when Cloud gives him the black materia, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh my god!
And I can see the FMV in my head.
Yeah. Oh my god! With like the sort of like torso of Sephiroth that tapers off into like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's so weird. Yeah, and it's like almost like his fur kind of.
It's like like thing. Roots or like it's weird, isn't it? It's really strange.
It's very weird.
Oh my god! I can't wait to see what they do because
I'm so excited.
They've made it clear that they're gonna do stuff with the continuity, that they're gonna mess about with it. There's like this version of Sephiroth isn't the Sephiroth we know. It's Sephiroth from the live stream. You know, the one who's already been defeated like X number of times.
Yeah.
So he's trying to change his own history.
Yeah. And stupid little things like the fact that, at least we know that Biggs is alive, right, from Avalanche.
Right.
Which I was like, oh my god, that's so stupid because I loved them characters as well, and they die really early on.
They do.
And you get more attached to them in this game because obviously they have more of a role, right? So they become more humanised.
I tell you what, Jessie, I loved.
I'm so in love with Jessie.
She loved her.
Dream wife.
Yeah, I was like, as a character, I just loved her this time round.
Forget Aerith, it's all about Jessie.
Yeah, right, and the like, the death of the not good. Just so sad, so sad.
So heartbreaking. But you just don't know what's going to happen now.
No. It's all off. I'm so glad they did it.
Yeah, I am glad too, actually. Yeah, I think like. Don't get me wrong, I still would have enjoyed it if it was just a blow-for-blow remake.
Yeah, with just like better graphics and voice acting or whatever.
But how much better is it that it's not?
Right.
I think that's genius, personally.
It's exciting. I'm just I know they are doing, apparently, because of the success of this one, they're toying with 8 next.
Interesting. Well, 8 already has infinite possibilities, doesn't it? Because if I remember correctly, 8's whole thing was that, you know, there were different continuities in that anyway, weren't there?
Yeah, there's this whole... That's right, there's this whole thing about time compression and, it goes kind of nuts towards the end, where there's, like... There's like multiple different times colliding and probabilities and...
That would be quite easy to justify kind of fiddling with, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Easy peasy. And you know, I mean, I never 8's fine, but it never really got me in the same way that 7 did, you know.
No, it was a hard act to follow, though. 7, I enjoyed 8, but how can you follow that?
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't really fun, I think.
I must admit, I did get slightly annoyed with the main character as well, Squall.
Oh, he's a miserable bastard.
Yeah, right. And I never quite got it. I mean, Cloud like has this arc where he goes from being like happy-go-lucky and kind of sarcastic to being morose, but he has a reason for it. You know, he loses his entire personality, so it kind of.
He realizes that he's just been kind of walking around in this kind of PTSD, dissociative haze where he thinks he's someone that he isn't.
Right. So he has a reason for it, but like Squall is like just like. He's the very definition of that term emo.
Yeah,
he's the very definition from the very beginning.
Yeah,
but it's
he's
like
just a miserable teenager.
Right, but the thing is, he's like this incredibly talented, privileged, super handsome assassin guy.
Yeah,
it's like
he's a teenager. He's got his whole world ahead, and he's got this cute girl after him. And
right. But he's like miserable, and it's like what? Why are you miserable? What have you got to be miserable about?
Nothing's happened. Yeah, apart from the fact that he was an orphan, he's a child soldier, which that's reasonable. Fine. But yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you.
You know, it's weird, isn't it? I just never connected to the character in the same way I did like
No,
Cloud and
I liked the rest of the cast better in 8.
yeah.
I thought the supporting cast were really fun in 8.
I always liked Irvine.
Yeah, I liked
I
Irvine.
liked
Irvine and
Irvine.
Selfie were my two favourites in that.
Selfie's fun. Selfie's like
I
the
quite
heart.
liked Zell as well.
Zell's a cool one. Yeah, I always liked his the antagonism between him and Cypher.
Yes, yeah, very very homoerotic stuff going on
So,
there as
like
well, which I always like.
unbelievable.
Yeah,
It's like just like, you know what? Just go away and kiss or whatever for
go,
just
go
get it
sort it
over
out between
with.
yourselves. Yeah,
Get it over with. All
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And Cypher's a
None of
whole other
which is what
kettle
we
of
came here to
fish.
talk about. I just realised.
Right, yes. And I mean, there's some overlap there, I suppose. In
Oh, there's
some,
plenty of overlap. I think.
I
Yeah.
mean, one of the big overlaps is, I mean, how like queer LGBTQ friendly was Final Fantasy VII the remake? I mean, it like
Oh my
just
god,
like the gayest
War
game
Market.
ever.
War Market. I literally the whole Andrea Rhodea bit. I literally just
Andrea is like
I adore that
the
man.
remake of Andrea was just like yes,
That whole
like
sequence in because here's the thing, right? In the original game, the honeybee inn is dodgy,
yeah.
right? I love it in a hindsight way, but when you look at it
Look
with
at it now,
the
yeah.
eyes that we have, it is ha ha man in a dress dodgy, right?
Right.
So I was like, oh, how are they going to cope with this in the new game? And they
Hmm.
did it so well. It was the whole sequence in the honeybee inn with the dancing and
Yeah.
the Andrea Rhodea and all of that. It was just like, you know what? We're going to take it and we're going to make it as queer as it should have been.
We're going to make
It's
it as
not a
like
joke anymore.
affirming as it
Yeah,
ever could have
exactly.
been. You know, I loved that. I mean, Andrea's whole thing about you is, you know, you live as you want, you be
Yeah,
who you are. I loved it. I loved it. And I love the fact Cloud kind of gets into it, you know?
he does. He does. And it's literally like your protagonist is gender non-conforming as fuck. It
Right.
becomes, Cloud is,
Uh,
and it fits Cloud's arc actually to have that in him. I think that actually really complements Cloud as a character because it would make sense that he would be into that kind of
it
thing.
kind of does, given everything. I mean, I'd love to see them run a bit more with that
Yeah,
in
I would.
future.
Well, who knows? We might. It that whole scene, that whole. I would love more in the Wall Market. To be honest,
Yeah.
that whole bit was just loved it so much. I was so worried
Yeah. Yeah.
about how it was going to go down.
I mean, they could have done. I mean, one of the things they could have done is just not included it. You know, if it
Yeah,
was going to be
if they weren't
contentious.
sure.
You
But
know.
they went with it in such an audacious way. But it was, yeah, I think you used the word affirming earlier.
Yeah.
And it is affirming, you're totally right. Because it is literally just like unapologetically.
Yeah, I mean
be
that's kind
yourself.
of, and I love the fact they use it as like a teaching moment for
Yeah.
Cloud. You know, it's like, you know, get out of yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Don't take
Be
yourself so seriously.
right,
You
and it's
know.
Ares who kind of like drags him into it. You know.
Yeah. Well, she did in the original as well, because I think. So one thing I've noticed about Final Fantasy VII is that, and people of our generation in particular have this kind of snapshot of the characters as this particular type of characters, but they're not.
No, it's
Like
true.
Aerith, we always think of as being like, oh, soft healing flower girl, but she was
No.
always really sassy.
She's like really like, yeah, she's really forward and really sassy. I mean, the whole thing with in the original game, like she is so forward with Cloud,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
Like she's straight up like, oh yeah, you be my bodyguard in return for a date. Like
Right.
immediately, and it's like,
Right.
wow, okay, you've just met this guy, but sure.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I'm taking you home. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
right, okay, whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah.
And she's
then
like that with
Lisa, who's the one
everyone.
who kind of is more passive, but because she's the martial artist,
Mm-hmm.
everyone thinks, oh, she's the full one, but she's not. She's very passive, and it
Yeah.
all plays out really well in the remake because they keep those key character traits.
Oh, totally. And in fact, with like Aerith, they really enhance them because she's
Yeah.
got something else going on, hasn't she? Like,
Yes.
she knows.
She does know.
It was
She
so
definitely knows.
weird when I was playing it, and there were like these little things she says where I'm like, holy hell, she knows what's going on.
Yeah, but never in a way that is intrusive or makes you feel like she's kind of like she knows where the story is going. I think she
Right.
knows, but she doesn't know. She knows that something's amiss, but that's all.
Right, it's almost like it's the ancient in her, the Citra in her,
Yeah.
like coming out, and it's like this extra sensory thing where she's
Yeah.
just intuiting the way things are going to happen. It's
She's like us. She knows
Right.
it's happened before, but she's the only one who does.
Right, she's got this almost like, as well as the sass and like the forwardness and the confidence, she's also got this worldly wise
Yeah.
quality about her, which I love. Barrett was the one for me.
Oh, Barrett. Oh,
Freaking loved him.
he really, because again, in the original game, he was very caricature, I thought.
Right, I mean, that was for me the biggest worry was Barrett.
Yeah, but he
Um,
is actually the heart and soul of the game, isn't he?
I love like the way they just subtly reconditioned him so that he's like this demagogue.
Yeah.
This
Yes. Yeah.
like really fundamentalist freedom fighting eco warrior.
Yeah.
And the rhetoric is
Yeah.
great.
And he's right.
Yeah, I loved
You know,
him.
he's right. But also, what I love about him is, I think in the original they really went full kind of aggressive black man stereotype.
Absolutely, and I mean, I think this is maybe a problem of just like the source of the game, because there is this problem in Japanese media of
There
that
is.
character. Unfortunately, if you watch a lot of anime and actually, a lot of video games, it turns up again
Yeah.
and again and
But
again.
what I loved about Barrett is they really went out of the way to give him heart
Yeah,
in this game. He's yes, okay, he's as you say, he's a demagogue, he is a freedom fighter, he's all of those things, but he's also a loving father.
yeah,
He's
totally.
also a man who feels things. I think being able to see him and his face and his expressions really helped as well, because he smiles so much.
Yeah,
And he's got so much joy and so much, softness in his
Mhm.
eyes and it's silly things like that. But then you realise that he isn't the angry black guy stereotype.
God
He's actually
no.
just a man who feels things so much.
He's someone who sees the world. He's so
Yeah,
clear about what's going on,
yeah.
and
And it
that.
hurts him.
Yeah. And like for people who know the video games and know where that comes from, it's really powerful.
It is, yeah, I totally agree. I think, yeah, you're right. He was, I think he was absolutely wonderful in the remake, Barrett. I really liked what they did with him.
He was always in my party if I could help it, I could tell you.
Yeah,
I love the model as well. He looked great.
he did look great. The costume redesign was fantastic, wasn't
A
it?
beautiful, beautiful looking character. And
Yeah.
I'm so glad they went the route they did with him, where he is like profound and but also really fiery and
Yeah,
funny.
he's
Funny,
well balanced. And funny, yes, he's hilarious. So we know in the bit in the Shinra building where you do the stairs.
Yes, yeah.
Of course, I chose the stairs. You have to choose.
Yeah, right.
And he starts singing while he
Yeah.
lives upstairs. And I'm like, I love this man.
Yeah, love it. The first time he did the victory tune from
Yes.
I just cracked up. I just went.
He is lovely. He's a lovely, he's the kind of person that you would just genuinely hang out with.
Totally, yeah, because he's so interesting. He's so
He
yeah.
is.
And they avoided that whole thing of like the angry swearing black man, which you get in the original, unfortunately.
Yeah. Different time,
Yeah.
but it was, I really liked him. And you can see why he's the charismatic leader and you can see why Avalanche follow him. It's not because
Totally.
they're scared of him. It's not because,
He's
it's because they love
inspiring.
him.
He's inspiring. He's
He is
like
inspiring.
they're literally willing to lay down their lives for him.
And you can understand why, can't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I would. If Barrett said, "Oh, this is the mission," I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, whatever you say."
Okay, man. This is how it goes. This
For
is
you,
how it goes.
anything.
It was that weird thing as well. Where they expanded Avalanche, where it's
Yes.
like this big, like
Which makes more
worldwide.
sense, doesn't it? I think because, in the original game, Shinra are aware of them, and you think if they're just some little pissed
Right.
hot group of or terrorists, why
Right.
would Shinra give a shit about them?
What a Shinra would know where they are, wouldn't they?
Oh.
Shinra would know who they are and would just wipe them out. They just go to the seventh heaven and wipe them out, wouldn't they?
Yeah, just drop a bomb on it or whatever,
Right.
But
Yeah, but making it this weird and tying it into the Wutai War and all of this. I
Yeah.
loved that.
the Wutai War, expanding that mythos kind of was really cool as well. I thought.
Well, it made the whole thing. It just layered in this extra dimension, didn't it?
Yes.
Because the original game, the whole sort of eco-terrorism aspect of it doesn't last very long, really. But the minute you get out of Midgar, it's all about Sephiroth, and it's the metaphysical threat. But in this game, because they knew that this game is at least as big as the original, but it's all set in that one chapter, it's all set in Midgar, it seems like what they've done is layered in extra intrigue. So now you've got all this stuff about the Wutai War, which is being used as a propaganda piece to control the people of Midgar,
Which is why I'm really interested for the intergrade when Yuffie comes into it, because of course that's central to her story. The whole
Right.
point of her collecting all of the materia was because of the Wu-Tai War.
Right, yeah. She's not
So,
just like a thief or anything like that. She
yeah,
wants to restore Wu-Tai, doesn't she?
that's right. Yeah, so I'm fascinated to see what her perspective on it is.
And what is Wu-Tai going to be? I can't imagine it's going to be like it was in the original game.
I don't know.
Because, like, in the original game, it was this tiny little, almost village, wasn't it?
Yeah, mountainside village. Yeah, it wasn't. You didn't get the sense that it was a great military power at all.
Not at all. Not at all. But I imagine now it's going to be at least a city.
Yes, I would hope so. I would love something Kyoto-like, because
Yeah.
you get the sense. I haven't been to Kyoto. Wutai is like very similar in the kind of classical architecture and all that kind of thing. But obviously, with Midgar in particular, you get a very they've updated it rather. So it's kind of recognisable in our world terms. So I would love it if they expanded Wutai and made it into almost like a Kyoto-like city.
That would be so interesting. And if you get a little bit more of what the war was, what it meant from Wutai's perspective.
And why there was a war, because I don't think we ever find out why there was a war in the original.
I don't think you do. It's just a mention, isn't it? I don't even. I mean, in the original game, it's not even that big a deal, is it? Really, no. It's just.
I think it's the war was over in the original game, wasn't it? The war was a little while ago, because that's when Aerith's mum.
That's right.
War, didn't she?
That's right. Yes, Elmira's husband. That's right. Yeah. My God, and that I mean, in the original game, that was a heart render. That was a real tearjerker. It was even worse in this one.
Definitely. She finds this girl with the dying mum, and also because now you know the context for it as well.
Right, of course, and of course they do that thing as well, where of course in the original game, Elmira's kind of a side character, but they really characterize her massively in this one, and it's like, oh God, no, it's so terrible, it's so sad. It's so sad. I've forgotten there's so many layers of sadness in this game. We haven't even got to half of them yet.
No. Not even. No, there's so much more to come.
Oh, it is going to get worse.
I'm so here for it. Just destroy me.
Yeah, I'm up for it. I remember. I mean, everybody remembers the moment when Aerith dies. Everybody remembers that.
If she dies at all in this game, is it going to be the question? Isn't it?
Who knows? I mean, honestly, given what they've set up, I don't know anymore.
No.
I honestly don't know. Zack? I mean...
Yeah, the whole Zack thing. That's
could he be
game changer, literally.
Right? I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do now.
I have absolutely no idea.
The notion of having Zack around, as a character...
That does change everything, though, doesn't it?
Right.
That absolutely changes everything, because for a start, Cloud being Zack, as it were, if he meets Zack at any point in the game, that read is going to be up a lot sooner.
What? I mean... What is that going to mean? Because Cloud has absorbed so much of who Zack is into himself.
And a whole lot of what, Cloud's trauma is obviously compounded by losing Zack, isn't it? That's the whole... His character-defining moment is when he lands in Midgar.
Yeah.
And Zack dies, protecting him.
Of course.
So without that inciting trauma, what does that mean?
Right.
How does that affect him? Does it heal him? Does it harm him? What...
Yeah.
I just really want to know.
I can imagine it's going to be, either way, it's going to be quite traumatic, I imagine, for Cloud.
Definitely.
I mean...
Although, Zack, being the character that he is, almost certainly is going to just straight up forgive him.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to hold a grudge of any kind.
God, Zack's not that guy, is he?
No.
Zack's not that guy. Did you ever see or play Crisis Core?
I watched Crisis Core, yeah.
Likewise.
Zack's character, he's basically just a Labrador, isn't he, the guy?
Yeah. He's just like decent, he's a nice guy, ultimately, isn't he? But the way they expand the end...
Yes.
...is like,
Yeah.
Oh.
So I was watching that with... Obviously, Rob was playing it with me, and I'd watched Crisis Core and he hadn't. Mm-hmm. So I immediately knew what I was seeing.
Right.
And he didn't. So it was quite interesting seeing our different reactions, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to spoil it.
Right.
But I was sitting there like vibrating with excitement, and he was just like, oh, this is cool. Oh, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
So, we had very different reactions, but when it got to like the moment, we were both like, holy shit.
Yeah. The ending sequence did for me. I was in bits. I was in bits.
Yeah.
When, like, it's Cloud. It's when he crawls towards him and he just says, it's the first thing he said for weeks and months because of
Yeah.
the poisoning, the Mako poisoning.
Yeah.
And he just says Zach. And it's like, ah, no, no,
My heart.
no. It's awful.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
awful. But brilliant at the same time, you know?
So good. I'm, yeah, very, very excited to see where it goes.
Anywho, my loves, we're actually, I mean, we do have a topic. We are, like, you know how this goes. It's Strange Playgrounds. You know how it happens. We talk about stuff and then eventually we meander onto the topic. But you may remember that Laura joined us for the last discussion of this particular show, the Netflix She-Ra, Princesses of Power. And we loved it. We loved it. We loved it, loved it, loved it. But the end of season 4 was like, what? Right?
Yep. It was a sharp left turn into what the hell?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
I was really, I don't know about you, Laura, but I was really kind of frightened or scared at the end of season 4 because it felt like they'd set up so much.
Yeah. And when you realised that there was only one more series to iron it all out,
right.
And you thought, how?
Yeah, I had a great fear of like Lost syndrome. You know, where they set up way too much and they don't have enough time or space or panache even to pull it off.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
actually, I mean, I actually sat and rewatched season 5 earlier today, and it's brilliant.
It is. It is, and they do pull together all, and none of it feels contrived.
Right.
And I don't know how they did that, but they did.
I'm in awe of it. Yeah. I mean, there are very, 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 very few shows, even the ones I really, really like, that manage to pull that off, where every single story arc, theme, character, even the damn settings, they throw in every single damn setting that the characters have been to in this final season. And show you how it's significant to what's going on in the wider story. Have you noticed, like, even like the side characters get moments in this?
That's what I love about it. Because I'm, you know, I've a bad habit of kind of falling in love with side characters. That's you know.
Oh, this is the show for you, then, isn't it? Really.
But this is it, though. This is what I love about She-Ra, is that nobody feels superfluous.
Nope.
Everybody gets a little bit of time, and that's, you know, I guess obviously the theme of being friendship and being kind of, you know, being a team and all of that. So it makes sense that it would, but like even Seahawk gets a moment, and I love Seahawk.
Right.
So
I mean,
much.
like the comic foil characters, even the comic foil characters get their moments in this show, and they're not just funny moments. You know, they actually have profound significance to what's going on.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that seems to happen a lot. I mean, we discussed this the last time round, but something that happens a lot with children's shows at the moment, with children's media at the moment, is there are these examples that are just sublime.
Yeah.
The writing is like, why can't shows aimed at adults do this?
It's frustrating. I think that there are shows aimed at adults that are doing it, but I feel like the focus on the type of storytelling maybe is different, and I feel like with kids shows it tends to be character driven. This is something I've kind of observed with particularly the kind of kids shows that are good, that do it well.
Yeah.
They are character driven. It's about the characters. It's about the characters drive the narrative. Whereas I find with a lot of media made for adults, and it's not always the case, there are exceptions, but you tend to find the characters get shoehorned in to fit the narrative.
Yeah. So
And
often
I think
it
that's where
feels
it goes wrong a little bit.
Yeah, so often what you get, because characters have to do this at a particular time in order to make things work, they tend to get like subtly rewritten or diluted to fit, you know? Or they act in ways they shouldn't, you know?
Exactly, yeah. You get these bizarre character moments where you're like, hang on a second, is this the same character? Because a plot device needs to happen.
I'm imagining that will probably become known as Tyrion syndrome at some point, you know?
Or Jamie Lannister syndrome. You know, we've spent 8 series building up his detachment, and breaking away from Cersei and all of this. And overnight, he's just going to go back to
Right,
it. Oh,
right. Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, Game of Thrones is a very, very good example of that because it's an ensemble cast. So you would think that the cast would take precedent in, that the cast would drive the storytelling.
Yeah, you'd
But
think so.
The cast were driven by, I mean, at least in the last few series, and I do believe that the fact that George R.R. Martin's his books weren't there to guide it, because for all his sins, he does know how to write a story. And when the writers kind of went off on their own, it showed.
I think it kind of fell apart, didn't it? Yeah.
It did. The characters made inexplicable decisions, and not just Tyrion, not just Jaime. Pretty much every character in those last two series made completely inexplicable decisions that didn't fit their characters because the story needed to go somewhere.
Right, and also like you got this problem where it's the inverse of what happens in She-Ra, actually, where you've got the mythology overtaking the characters.
Yeah.
And that's always a bad thing. That's always a bad thing.
Rather than the mythology serving the characters.
Right.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, part of the whole purpose of the She-Ra cartoon is that it takes like the fantasy, science fiction, mythology elements of the original series, which are really all there was to it. There's nothing else to it, to be honest. And it actually takes them away and makes them less significant than the characters. They're kind of subservient to the character dynamics. And in fact, like in this final season, it's the relationships between the characters and the decisions they make that save the day.
Exactly. I mean, you've got this whole the whole MacGuffin that is the heart of Etheria.
Right.
In a lesser series, that would be the focus, wouldn't it? That would be the thing. It would be a magical MacGuffin that overshadows everything. It doesn't matter what the characters do because the heart of Etheria is
right.
there.
Right, it's there. It's the big reset button, and like for good or ill, either the bad guys will use it or the good guys will use it, and
but either way, it'll either save the day or wreck the day.
Right.
Yeah, but it doesn't do that.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
In fact, at every step, it undercuts that.
Yes.
Like, in the first season, you get set up this whole mystery where Etheria is like in another dimension. It's sealed off from the rest of the universe, and you get these gradual revelations that it was settled by these ancient peoples from somewhere else in the galaxy who seeded it with technology and magic. Yeah. But then the show does this brilliant thing where it undercuts that and demonstrates that actually, you know what, these ancient ones who actually created She-Ra as well, for that matter, are not all that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that bit in series 4 where you get the whole bit with the glitching and Mara, and you realise that actually, this kind of Mara character that we've been, as you say, is deeply flawed and actually an absolutely horrendous idea all along, really.
Right. I mean, like this creature or this entity that's been like the guiding factor. That's always been like the sage character. Whenever Adora has had problems as She-Ra, she's gone to this character to ask what to do. Turns out to be an antagonist ultimately.
And then obviously towards the end you got the heart of Etheria, which has the power to destroy the universe, and so Adora, obviously she strips away her power, doesn't she? She forgoes the power of being She-Ra,
right? In
order to stop this threat. And then you've got this whole kind of the whole narrative in Series 4 where you're not She-Ra anymore, and all of this kind of back and forth, and learning who Adora is when she's not She-Ra, because of course she's been She-Ra the whole time, right? So We've learned who Adora is when she's She-Ra, but now we're learning who she is.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? I love the tension that they set up towards the end of Series 4 and throughout Series 5, where there's this conflict in Adora between, like, is it She-Ra that makes me special? Is it because I've just have this prescribed destiny? And does it matter that it was me? I mean, could it have been, like, any old person who ultimately became She-Ra?
Yeah.
And of course we find out that it is all about her because She-Ra is innate. Yeah. She doesn't need the sword, for example. She kind of creates it, doesn't she?
Exactly. Yeah. And you got obviously the moment where she needs to use the failsafe to use the heart of Etheria. And it isn't anything to do with the sword. It isn't anything to do with an artifact. It's love that does it.
It's the antithesis of what she's been told, actually. Because obviously Shadow Weaver, being Shadow Weaver, tells her that she needs to put aside all of that. She needs to be pure and focused. And of course, that's not true.
Yeah. And I do love Shadow Weaver as well. For all of her,
Actually, I just, before we came on, I just watched Shadow Weaver's final moments, and I've got to
Oh,
say, I loved Shadow Weaver's arc. I
I
loved it.
I really do. The what she says at the end. She says, "You're welcome," doesn't she? The last thing she
Yeah,
says.
she turns to them. They're in the
She takes the
doorway,
mask
and
off.
she says, I'm so proud of you," to Catra.
Yeah.
And then when
Oh,
Adora comes up behind her, she takes the mask off, and she's all
yeah.
scarred and like broken underneath, and she says, "You're
Yeah.
welcome," and that's it.
When you get her backstory as well, with with the whole thing with Micah,
Yes,
and you realise
yes.
that because she's very in the first series, she's very comic book villain. She's kind of
Hmm.
like abusive mother figure,
That's
isn't
right.
she?
Yeah, there's this whole weird
Catra.
thing set up early on where you've got like, I think we spoke about this last time, but there is this family dynamic going on where you've got
Yeah.
Hordak, who's patriarchy. For ultimately, he's the father, isn't he? He's like the ultimate stern
Yeah.
father figure. You've got Shadow Weaver, who's the abusive mother, and then you've
Yeah.
got Adora and Catra, who are like Adora is the rebellious teenager. Ironically,
Yeah.
she's the rebellious daughter.
Yeah.
And then you've
And
got the
Catra, who only ever wants mother and father to be proud of
right.
her.
She only wants approbation. Ultimately, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Because
absolutely
Catra's
it.
whole character arc is just approbation. She wants to be loved.
Yeah,
She wants validation. That's what she wants. She's always felt lesser.
yeah, yeah. And
You
part
know,
of that is Shadow Weaver, of course, because
of
Shadow Weaver
course.
has made sure that she feels that way.
Yeah, she sensed her weakness and she's used it against her, and that's why the fact that Shadow Weaver actually does, even while she's being antagonistic, but
Right.
understand why she's the way she is as well.
Yeah.
She isn't
Totally.
just a horrible person.
Which, of course, I mean, it's a great way of treating these characters, and it's a great indication of the quality of the show. I mean, in the original She-Ra cartoon, these characters didn't have any characterization beyond like the
No.
funny voices they had.
Yeah.
They were just monsters, they were just various shades of doofy villain, and that's it.
Yeah.
There really wasn't much else to them. Hordak was just like a very silly villain. Shadow Weaver was his sidekick. Scorpio was one of the other sidekicks, and Catra was one of the other sidekicks.
Yeah.
I think Catra in the original show, if I remember correctly, she was characterized by having like this really feline yowl that she would do all the time.
Yeah, it was kind of like, Catwoman and any feminine cat-coded
Yeah.
kind of character in that era was kind of faintly, this kind of faintly sexualized
Yes, if
cat
I'm
fetishized,
I may be
weirdness.
remembering it incorrectly because it's been a while, but I can sort of see the animation model in my head, and there was this kind of like almost influence from like BDSM in
Yeah,
her.
yes, like Catwoman. It definitely had that. Again, I might be misremembering, but I'm remembering the same thing you are. So maybe we're not
Yeah, maybe
remembering.
this is
But
right, and I'm fairly certain she had a whip as well.
she did have a whip. I'm sure she did. Yeah,
I'm fairly certain she had a whip.
she had like the gloves with claws on and
That's
like
right,
the
yeah.
skimpy corset. Yeah,
And like the eyeshadow, if I remember correctly, like this
yes,
green eyeshadow, if I remember, is completely different. I mean, like so far removed from Catra as she is in this show, it's unreal. As is Shadow Weaver, actually.
yes, yeah. Well, absolutely, yeah.
But I loved that. I love the fact that this show, it obviously has affection for the original She-Ra, because it's so clear that the people who created it grew up with it. That's so clear.
Yeah, it's definitely done with love. I mean, like I mentioned Seahawk earlier, and
Hmm.
I remember original Seahawk, and he was again a daft character.
Yeah,
He was like just this
totally.
kind of charming boy toy kind of thing.
And as for
Uh,
Bo,
yeah, oh,
the
Bo,
original Bo was like, there's always been this thing that like the original He-Man series is really 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 gay coded. I'm
very,
sorry,
very.
but there's nothing even coded about Bo in the
No,
She-Ra
you're right. Yeah,
cartoon. He is straight out of a Pride Parade,
you're so right though.
isn't
He is.
he? Like he's got like the mustache, he's got like the porn mustache,
Yeah,
he's got a heart-shaped cutout in his chest to show his abs.
I love that they keep that in his design. By the way, it's not a cutout in his new design, but he
No,
has got the heart on his chest still,
he's
and I
got the
did
heart
like
on
that as
his
a callback.
chest. What I love
Yeah,
about Bo in the new cartoon is that I mean, he is constantly surrounded by women.
Yeah.
He is like amongst female characters the whole time, but his relationship with them is almost entirely platonic.
Yeah.
It's
He's
like,
not at all creepy or,
no.
or even like, how you sometimes get those things where you get the straight or, nominally straight male character among females, and it's like, oh, sighing because all these beautiful girls, and even though in the end, obviously, he and Glimmer, I think they end up together, don't they?
I think so.
Which kind of makes sense.
It does make sense. I mean, there is. I mean, it's implied. I think, isn't it, more than anything?
It's implied. I'm sure that I think before they go to the final battle, they tell each other they love each other.
They
don't
do.
They? I don't know
They
if it's in
do.
a romantic way or not, but it makes it. But even that, it just feels natural. There's no kind of, they're just two people who really care about each other.
It's something
but
that's
not in
like throughout, isn't
Yeah,
it? It's
exactly,
like
yeah.
throughout this entire show, you get this impression that Etheria has been conceived as a culture where people just don't care about that kind of thing. There's
Yeah.
no. If people fall in romantic love, they fall in romantic love. If people are platonically in love, they're platonically in love.
Yeah. And there's no real need to kind of differentiate between the two. Love is love. Whatever they decide to do with it is their business, sort of thing.
And there's no like gender distinctions in terms of like friend groups or anything like that.
Yeah.
You just are. You just
There's
operate.
Yeah, you don't get that whole boys and girls can't be friends weirdness that
No.
you get in a lot of media. But if boys and girls are friends, they're friends. As you say, there's no, friend groups have a mixed gender.
Right.
The best friends squad is well, at the end it's it's 3 girls and a boy.
Right.
And that's fine. No one cares.
And a horse. And a magic cat thing.
Oh, Swiftwind, yeah.
Swiftwind is great. Swiftwind is absolutely brilliant. I mean, he's often the comic relief, but he's also got like a lot of heart to the character. I always
and the last series where he's trying to get his connection with Adora back is very
cool. And the fact that that discussion happens with Scorpia
okay. Scorpia is the princess of my heart.
Right, I mean,
have to admit,
firm fan favourite. Everybody loves Scorpia. It's impossible not to love Scorpia.
She's just so relatable and charming, and she's trying so hard.
Yeah, it's a weird thing because very often those characters in children's shows can be really annoying. They can be badly written, so they're grating or they're saccharine,
Yeah.
Or they're overly pathetic, in certain ways.
But she's not.
She's not. She's great.
She can hold her own. She's tough.
Mm-hmm.
She's resilient. She doesn't mope. Okay, she has a couple of moments of moping, but she just gets up and carries on. And she just tries and bounces back, and
that endless positivity and energy and affection is so sincere in that character that rather than coming across as mawkish or as alienating, it's actually really endearing. And by the end, you can't help but love her. She's great, and she always belonged with the princesses.
Known that kind of. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. She was made to feel by being in the Fright Zone and in the Horde and all of that she wasn't allowed to be part of that. Right. She wasn't part, but she wasn't. It was just an artificial kind of divide.
Of course.
That was set up to make her feel isolated. But actually, as soon as the other princesses meet her and realise that she's just like them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that she's big and clumsy and that that she's a bit, a little bit awkward. No one cares because
nobody cares because everybody in that group has their thing, don't they? Everyone in that
everyone
group
is a bit awkward and a bit outcast and a bit,
They're all individual characters, and the way the show really embraces that. I mean, that's another thing about the show. It's not just like one of the most queer-friendly shows I have ever come across. Mm-hmm. It's also very affirming of neurodivergency.
It is, yeah. I mean, Entrapta is, I feel like, one of my favourite examples of this. I love Entrapta as well. She's wonderful.
There are fan favourite characters. Scorpia's one of them, definitely. Entrapta is well up. People love her. They love her, and it's not difficult to see why, because she's an unusual character. I was talking with Lex Jones about this. We did an episode about autism and representation and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what came up was we were talking about like examples in popular culture, in media, like cartoons and whatnot, and there are so few examples of women who are
There are.
neurodivergent.
Yeah. But then that's true to life, though, isn't it? Because women do
Right.
get diagnosed with neurodivergency on a much smaller
Yeah,
scale
it's
than men,
true.
because obviously, as we know, ADHD and autism, the rules are written to diagnose men,
Yeah, it's a
and
real
it
problem.
presents differently in women
It
usually.
does. It does. It's a real problem. I
Yeah,
mean, I work in the field. There are so many women out there who don't have a diagnosis. So many,
yeah,
because there's a problem in medical care. There is a problem where people either don't know how to diagnose it or are
yeah,
reluctant to.
yeah. And of course, the other issue being that because of the way that women, or people who are assigned female at birth, at the very least, are socialised,
Right.
we are socialised to, to fit in and to mask things.
Right.
So if we are, I mean, I don't think I'm neurodivergent, but I certainly was an unusual, an unusual child. And you are taught to be like everyone else, and
Right.
to kind of tramp down the bits of you that are strange, so you're not strange. That's very much whereas boys are, to an extent, allowed to be a little bit strange, because boys will be boys.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's less of the way in like a cultural template.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
To
a really good way of
stamp
putting
over
it.
you. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is a
It's
really good
true.
way of putting it, actually. I mean, obviously not always the case, because as we know, when I was at school, the boys who were too feminine, for
Right.
example,
Absolutely.
that was stamped
Or
out
too
then straight away.
emotional. Too
Yeah, too
emotional, of course.
emotional, too feminine, too soft. So
Yeah.
there is a template for men. It's just that I think it's a template that's more forgiving of neurodivergency, if
Yeah.
not.
It's a broader template. It's a more expansive template, and there's
It is, yeah.
more. It's slightly more flexible as well. There's more in the way of give for
Yeah.
men generally.
Because if men get nerdy interests, that's fine. If men are a bit, disruptive or a bit hyperactive, that's
That's
fine.
fine. Right.
They're all things that women are not allowed to do.
Right, up until very recently, of course. I mean, look at like the explosion of women in things like D&D,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
were always there.
Yeah,
Women who like
absolutely.
this stuff were always there.
But just never really allowed to be acknowledged, because it was a
Exactly.
shameful thing. Like when I was
Exactly.
at school, I got, the fact that I was interested in things like video games and wrestling and, horror and sci-fi and all those things.
Right.
Well, those were among the other things that I was bullied for, because they were considered, firstly, they were considered boy things.
Right.
Secondly, they were considered straight. I should have been into, I don't know, whatever it was at the time.
Yeah,
Makeup and boy
whatever
bands.
the sort of
even
like
know.
yeah, whatever the prescribed thing for girls was at the time,
Certainly not all the things that I was into, and that was one of the reasons I got kind of outcast a little bit. You weren't allowed to. I think it's better now. My sister is 20, so I've seen kind of her grow up with, and her friends group grow up. And actually, one thing that I'm really proud of is that my sister's friends group, at least, we joke that she's the only straight in the village. she's the only kind of heterosexual cisgender member of her friends group.
This is something I've seen as well. I mean, I envy the kids. I really do in that
Very
regard.
much.
They are so aware of this stuff, and they don't care.
I don't care. Like, trying to explain being non-binary to people is really difficult. I just said to them, oh, I identify as non-binary. She's like, oh, okay, so, pronouns. I was like, yeah, she is still fine. She was like, oh, okay.
Right.
That was it. That was the end of it. I was like, okay.
That's it, isn't it?
Try to explain to my mum is a different thing.
It's a totally different thing, yeah. I mean...
And not in a way like my mum is ignorant, just in that generation just is not versed in that kind of conversation.
It just never, came up, did it? There was no basis for conversation there, at all. So,
you were just a bit of a weird girl.
Right. Yeah. Or there were these weird cultural prescriptions for you to slot you into place. So you were a tomboy, or you were a this or a that, or to make you kind of safe, to put you in a place.
A girl, you're just a tomboy girl.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
It's so weird. But this show, it embraces so much in the way of diversity, and it really goes for it, doesn't it? It goes out of its way to show you. I mean, Entrapta's story is the clear one for that.
Yes, definitely. The way that she kind of the whole, because she obviously is very different to everybody else, and her obsessions kind of lead her to make decisions perhaps that other people don't understand. But she's never making a decision. Things like when she joins the Horde, and it's never about Ava. It's just because of the opportunity, and also for the fact that she gets left behind as well.
Right. It's never like she doesn't have the turn where she becomes evil or vengeful or anything like that. She's more. I mean, she's sad that she's left behind,
but she's also got the opportunity to play with cool technology.
That's it.
And do cool things. And then there's Hordak, who appreciates what she does and thinks that what she does is awesome, which is, that's what Entraptor wants, isn't it? All she wants is to do cool things and have people appreciate the cool things that she does.
She's got kind of an equal in Hordak.
I actually love the relationship between her and Hordak, and I love the way that it changes Hordak as a character.
I loved it. I mean, the portrayal of Hordak, a lot of guys who were around in the 1980s, like kids in the 1980s, who liked things like She-Ra, even though they wouldn't admit it, they often sort of like speak ill of the portrayal of Hordak because he's not a villain, he's not the hyper villain. And I'm like, no, he isn't. That's right. That's the point.
That is the point.
That's the point.
The point is, there are no hyper villains. The point is that villains are like Hordak. They're people who do stupid, horrible things for stupid, horrible reasons. Hordak's whole thing is basically his entire basis is in the first 4 series at least. It's just an enormous inferiority complex.
Right, and like he's the lost child, isn't he? Ultimately,
and people do stupid things because of a inferior. That in fact, I would wager that at least 50 to 60% of all the wars that have ever been is because someone had an inferiority complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, totally. Yeah. There's nothing like wounded male ego, I can tell you. For expressing itself on other people, there's nothing like it.
Exactly. And then you get the whole thing with him, and finally he meets Entraptor, and the whole series 3 is the two of them bonding, and then when she escapes at the end of series 3, he takes that so hard.
Yeah. Oh God, I hated. I mean, Catra, I hated when she did that. I hated her for that. The fact she hurt Hordak like that. It's like, oh, you know.
I hated her for it, but a little bit of catharsis in it because it was. Well, you get what you give.
Yeah, it's true.
And the way that Hordak treated, and obviously 2 wrongs don't make a right, know, but there was a little bit of, you reap what you sow out of this, and this is. She is the monster that you, along with Shadow Weaver, have created.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true. It's basically Frankenstein, isn't it? It's basically that.
So, when Catra is kind of emotionally torturing, really, in Series 4, it's not that it's a good thing or a justified thing, but you can see where it came from.
You can, definitely. In fact, everything Catra does has basis. It has reason for it. I mean, really, one of the things I loved about Season 5 is the way, and I thought it was really shocking and really brave, was the way everything that had been implied and metaphorical in the previous seasons were just like, okay, we're going to make it overt.
Yeah,
we're going to just throw it.
Text.
Subtext in this season. We're just going to throw it into text. So, the implied, the flirty relationship between her and Adora, which has been there all the way through.
You knew it was there,
right? Yeah. And suddenly, no, it is now overt on screen. No, this is what the show is about. It's about these 2 characters and the fact that they are in love, and it's a really tempestuous, broken relationship which is slowly healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously if you spend a lot of time on the internet and in fandom, you get discourse, right? Course. And I'm sure you must be aware of the discourse. And I've seen people, I hate this because it's an abusive relationship, and I kind of feel like that waters it down to something way too simple, because yes, there is a power imbalance, and yes, there is unpleasant behaviour, but I don't think it's as simple as watering it down to an abusive relationship. I think that's too simple, because they're both very broken, and they're both causing harm to each other in their own ways. I think Catra is lashing out because she's so profoundly hurt, which again doesn't make it right, because just because you're hurt doesn't mean you get to hurt other people. But equally Adora, the way that she acts, I think she's so oblivious of her own kind of privileges and her own, the fact that her life has been so much easier in many ways than Catra's.
Catra's has, yeah. I mean, the whole thing with Catra is that she feels abandoned. Adora abandons her, and she does. She kind of does.
She does, but Adora doesn't realise that abandonment because she just assumes everybody's like her.
Yeah, right.
she doesn't stop to consider Catra in her own, Catra's feelings as an individual.
Mm-hmm.
She just thinks of, oh, well, I could cope with it, so Catra can cope
So
with it, but
Catra can
Catra's
cope,
not Adora.
yeah, right. And it becomes very overt because, of course, this tempestuous relationship at one point becomes the basis for destroying reality.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
It's really profound. And at that point, I mean, for me, that was the point where I realized, you know what, this whole show is going to be about that.
Yeah.
It's ultimately going to come down to those two.
Yeah, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
I'm glad they went there. It's like you were saying earlier on about the generation thing.
Mm-hmm.
So our generation are watching this in awe.
Yep.
Because we can't imagine a kid show being so unapologetically queer.
Right.
And so, not, as you say, not even subtext. It's text.
Right. Not intentionally so,
that.
Anyway. I mean, you go back and watch the original He-Man now, and it's sort of like, whoa.
Oh, it's there, but
okay.
probably not what they wrote in.
Totally accidental, but bloody hell.
Yeah. But, the generation above us are probably watching it in a little bit of shock, going, oh my God, I can't believe this is a kid show?
Yeah.
A kid show?
Yeah.
My sister's generation are watching it just going, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no kind of question as to whether this content is appropriate or...
Nope.
They're not even surprised by it. It's just what is expected.
It's just what is, yeah.
But that gives me so much hope.
Likewise. I was thinking about it earlier, and I say it quite often, but it is one of those shows that kind of makes me sad for the media we got.
Yes.
As children.
Yes.
Because there just wasn't... I struggle to think of anything that treated us with the same respect.
Well, we lived through Section 28, didn't we?
Right, and also, of course, like Thatcherism and Reaganism, where all of the protocols that were protecting children from advertising and whatnot were lifted. So
basically, we got all the capitalism and none of the queerness.
None of the queerness, so none of the intentional queerness. No, definitely not.
Yes, that's
definitely
quite right.
not. The carts thinking. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have incredible affection for those cartoons. I always will.
Oh, we discussed this before, didn't we? About how Transformers was just a vehicle to sell toys, but we loved it anyway.
Absolutely, but they, as you say, they're vehicles to sell toys. They're giant 20-minute toy catalogs, not even very good ones often.
No.
And also, there is no complexity. There is no moral complexity at all.
No.
There are the good guys,
bad
guys. That's it. I mean, even like the big bad that they establish in series 4 and 5, which is Horde Prime. I love the way he's portrayed. He talks about bringing people into the light.
Yeah.
He talks about the darkness and the confusion and the chaos of their emotion and their individuality. He doesn't see himself as a monster. He sees himself as a liberator.
Yeah. Where's that bit when he wipes Hordak and he says, so about the, you are the purest.
Yeah.
Among you were honoured. He calls him pure. And that word really stuck with me, the idea. And because he isn't just saying it, he believes it.
Oh, he believes it, yeah. He is the ultimate Puritan, He to the point whereby he wants to use the heart of Etheria to basically wipe out life,
Yeah.
And just start again. That's his whole plan. He wants a sterilized universe where there's this one thing where I think it's where he's got Catra brainwashed, and he has the little chip on her neck, and he talks about how they are going to create a universe of peace without end.
Yes.
And it's like...
It's terrifying.
It is, but at the same time, I can see how that kind of rhetoric could be really attractive.
I don't quote me on this, but I have a vague memory of the writer of the series saying that he was inspired by Christianity.
Yeah.
But specifically the kind of Christianity that kind of, makes you reborn, that kind of thing.
Sort of like the revivalist, like new fundamentalist kind of...
That kind of thing. Yeah, you've been saved, you've been purified, that kind of thing. And you can see it. It is very seductive particularly for lost people, like people like Catra who are lost, or even Hordak, bless him. You can see why they get... kind of, I mean, obviously he uses a very literal form of brainwashing.
Yes, yeah, it's like biological almost, isn't it? But at the same time, I can see why the philosophy of the Horde could be really, really attractive to certain people, you know? And
Definitely, it's a belonging. It's a family still,
right.
isn't it? You know, as we say about Katya and Adora, you know, a dysfunctional family, but it is a family for people who don't have anything
Right,
else.
and I love like the way they avoid making the Horde look hyper evil, so they're all in white.
Yeah.
They're like Templars, you know?
And you've got these members of the Horde like Rogelio, Kyle, and what's the other guy's name? Lonnie. That trio,
Yeah,
who are
yeah,
really likable.
yeah.
You know, despite being the Horde, they're really pleasant, likable people.
They're
So,
just
you know,
lovely people, aren't they? They're just
they
like
are.
they were just born to this particular culture, you know?
Yeah. So they're the enemy, but they're, you know, nice. There's no kind of sense of, oh, you know, the enemy are always bad, you know,
Right.
which I really like.
Yeah, it's again that alone in a children's cartoon is shocking to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you just don't
Right.
get it. There is none of that in the cartoons we grew up with.
No.
Certainly
No,
not
there's
like,
absolutely not.
you know, none of the ones that involved conflict anyway. The way you resolved conflict in those cartoons was by punching out the bad guy.
Yeah. I saw this cartoon that someone drew on either Tumblr or Twitter, I forget now. And it's about, you know, enemy arcs, you know, defeating the enemy. And it's like, you know, the team all band together. They say, oh, you know, we will defeat you with the power of friendship, which you don't have.
Right.
You know, completely ignoring the villain's backstory and everything that caused them to become the way they are.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's true, you know, the power of friendship, but you don't deserve the power of
But
friendship.
you don't deserve it, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't deserve it.
Because you did the wrong thing, you made the wrong choice, which means that you are forever irredeemable. And here's the interesting thing. Now, you know, I said about this, the younger generation are quite prone to that still.
Yeah.
Despite getting this, you know, this media, I do find that there's a kind of a black and whiteness in fandom circles in particular. But also, you know, and I use this phrase with a pinch of salt because I don't necessarily believe in it in the sense a lot of people use it, but what is known as cancel culture.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't believe in cancel culture in the way that people use it. Oh, you know, you can't say anything these days. There is, though, and it usually is queer minority, you know, creators who get it in the neck, not the straight white men.
Right.
But a sense of, you know, if you put a foot wrong or you make a mistake or you say something inadvisable, you are you know, I'm not going to use the word cancel. I hate the word cancel, but you are irredeemable.
Yeah.
You know, a mistake you made 10 years ago is not something you can ever be forgiven for.
There is a puritanical culture, isn't there, where there's no room for forgiveness, and a lot of that I think comes down to the internet, you know, where everything is recorded.
Yeah.
Before the internet, there wouldn't have been this log of your every thought and your every word and action as there is now.
That's right.
So there was space for you to learn. There was space for you to come away from it and disassociate from it and maybe learn better. Whereas there is this problem now, and it is a genuine thing, unfortunately. It is a genuine thing where if you, as you say, if you say something inadvisable or maybe something, I mean, it doesn't even have to be that. Maybe if you like the wrong thing on Twitter or whatever, you know,
that's also it, yeah.
which could even be just a mistake. You know, maybe you slipped on your phone screen or something. You can be lambasted. You can actually be like mobbed, and that is a problem. That is a problem. It's not. It is. It's one of those things that like right-wing culture takes and then exaggerates and distorts to the nth degree, all the while ignoring its own sort of torches and pitchforks moments. You know?
I don't believe in what people call cancel culture when we're talking about if someone says something racist and someone goes, "Wow, that was racist." Yeah, you know, that's legit.
That's legit.
You know.
Yeah. It's...
On the other hand, if somebody said something racist 10 years ago, I do think the opportunity for that person to turn around and go, "Yeah, I was a cunt and I didn't," you know, and I don't believe that anymore, and I've learned, should be respected.
It should be respected. Yeah.
Because we all do dumb shit. I mean, I look at the way I was when I was 20 years old, and some of the beliefs I held then, you know, okay, I wasn't a pitchfork-waving Nazi racist, but I believed some stupid shit when I was 21 because I wasn't a fully formed human being. Right. And
none
of us are fully formed.
Right, we need to have that, don't we? I mean, part of being human is experiencing that and transforming. It's being better.
Mistakes. And to be better, because I do believe that the only way that you get better is by fucking up.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
it's true.
some of my biggest learning experiences were fucking up so badly that I hurt somebody, and they turned around and really put me in my place, and I
Right.
realised how much of a dick I was being.
Right. I mean, it's essential, isn't it? It allows you. I mean, okay, it hurts. Yeah, it
It
wounds,
hurt,
but that's
but
the
they
point, isn't it?
but the that's because the opportunity was afforded to me to grow from it.
Hmm.
There was no kind of, that's it. Well,
Right.
you're ruined as a human being now.
Hmm.
Okay, that person probably never spoke to me again, and that's their right. But
Yeah.
I was still allowed to grow from that experience
Yeah.
and realise that I was a twat and not to be a twat again.
Right.
That is an important, it's weird in fandom circles in particular, and maybe it's because I'm a fandom old.
Hmm.
I came up through LiveJournal and
Yeah.
fanfiction, and even before fanfiction.net, when you had like your GeoCities
God.
websites. Do you remember?
Wow.
You
Yeah.
put your own fix on your GeoCities website, and
Yeah.
you
Jeez.
might have a central archive for all these things, like the X-Files. It was the ephemeral archive, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
God.
I'm going back a time now.
This is like we're digging down into the strata
I
of the
That's
internet
how old
now.
I am.
We're doing internet like paleontology here.
Settle down, kids. Let me tell you the time before archive of
Wow.
our own.
This is
But
like I'm going to call this episode Jurassic Park or something, you know.
I'll be digging into the amber.
Yeah.
No, but for real though, like the ethos back then was, and I remember this very clearly because I stumbled upon this, was don't read.
Right.
And we didn't really have a comprehensive kind of idea of tagging, like trigger warnings or things or
Oh,
content warnings. We didn't have that back then.
back
Really.
then, I mean, the internet was a frontier, really,
It
wasn't
was a
it? Like,
frontier. It was, you wandered into a fanfic with, no idea of what you were getting except maybe what the ship was.
right,
You
right.
didn't know what that was going to constitute, and I've stumbled upon some things I did not want to read that way.
Yes, I think we all have. I
We all
think I mean, even in the internet now, it's almost impossible to avoid, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, at least with like Archive of Our Own, for example, you've got so many layers of tagging and maturity levels
Right.
and warnings that in order to access something, you've got to kind of go out your way for it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yet, whether or not you know what I mean? It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it was when we were younger.
Oh, when it was
And
you took your chances, didn't you? You just took your
Yeah.
chances. It might have
You're like,
been,
oh, I like this ship.
yeah,
Let's see what's in here, and then you get some, tentacles or
yeah.
God knows what you'd get.
Whatever the hell else. I mean, like I remember I used to that was when I first learned that there were people who still like Transformers and things like into their like 20s, and
Yeah.
because I was sort of I felt like the only gay in the village,
Yeah.
and it was a bit of a revelation. But one of the things you do find is that there are like romantic fanfics and things with Transformers. It's like, oh, okay, interesting.
I've even written a few myself.
Yeah.
Have
Cool.
Written, I have written Transformers fanfic.
Wow.
It's, mainly for More Than Meets the Eye, because obviously
Wow.
it lends itself very well. But I
Of
know
course.
there's an awful lot that predates.
Yeah, I mean, like the Beast Wars, for example. I think the Beast Wars was the first one to really introduce the notion of there being romance, proper romance, because of
I
course
think you're right.
you had characters like Black Arachnia and Silverbolt,
Yes.
which was great. It was a brilliant story. I loved it to bits.
But then you get things on, fandom kids. So, like, it's really silly because it's things like age gaps or, I mean, incest is a big thing. Now, you're always going to get people writing about taboo topics. It's and I don't think it's a bad thing, actually. I feel like writing about taboo topics in the controlled microenvironment of fan fiction is actually a healthy way to kind of explore things because, as we know, humans always have and ever will be interested in taboo topics.
It's totally
one
true.
thing you learn about female sexuality is that upwards of 70% of women have rape fantasies.
Yeah.
But this is not the same thing as, it's more complicated than saying, well, that means women enjoy rape.
Right.
It's like saying, oh, I enjoy cooking, so I also enjoy being hit around the head with a pan.
Right.
But there's a weird Puritan kind of backlash to stuff now with the younger generation, which I find fascinating because it's the idea that if you like an age gap or an incest ship or whatever, which is all fiction, all fiction, it's all tagged and,
right.
you can avoid it if you want to avoid it. But no, that makes you a morally reprehensible human being. And I'm very interested in how we've kind of got this generation where we have media like She-Ra,
right.
which is unapologetically queer, it's unapologetically complex. But we've also got this kind of
It's
Puritan reactionary backlash
yeah.
happening. I find that
It's
wonderful.
almost it's almost contradictory, isn't it? It's
It is
really quite
contradictory.
strange.
You would think that it would kind of encourage a sort of literacy
Hmm.
in, like, you also said, what I was saying earlier on, people who didn't like Catra and Adora because they said it was abusive. And I find that really,
I find that bizarre. I think that's a misreading
it
of
is a
the
misreading.
text myself, because I mean, if it is abusive, it's kind of mutually abusive, and
Yeah,
it heals. That's
yes,
kind of the point, isn't it?
it is kind of the point. But also, even okay, let's, for argument's sake, say it was abusive and it was one-sided abusive.
Right.
Let's just say that. What is wrong with exploring that
Right. Yeah. I mean,
in a
yeah.
controlled, safe way? Because we know that these relationships exist in the real world. We know that a large proportion of us, unfortunately, are probably going to encounter a
It's
relationship like
true.
that.
Absolutely true.
How many of these people are writing it and consuming it to deal with trauma, to prepare themselves for trauma, to explore trauma, in a safe way, or even if it's just because the dynamic is interesting to me.
Right. I mean, that's what fiction is for,
Yeah,
isn't it?
no real people are getting hurt here.
Right.
It's fiction. I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean, I'm a horror writer, so of
Oh,
course,
right.
of course, I don't believe there's anything wrong with exploring taboo topics in fiction. I love Clive Barker. Clive Barker, some of the things he explores.
Oh my God, you're preaching to the converted. I mean,
Exactly. I know. Yeah.
Clive is my prophet and saint. I love the man.
And understandably so. It's
Love him.
just, and that's not to say that when you explore problematic things in fiction, it can't be dealt with badly, but
It
also
can,
it
but
absolutely can.
it
But
can
never
also be
forget,
incredibly beautiful,
it can. It really can. But these people never pick on the content creators. It's always like people who write fan fiction who are
Right.
inevitably some type of queer or
Mm-hmm.
neurodivergent, or usually women.
Yeah.
There's always some vulnerability there in the first.
Yeah.
A straight white male creator,
Mm-hmm.
never George R. R. Martin.
No, no. Despite the fact that he goes to those places like almost all the time,
Oh, totally.
and they only go for the stuff which is like luridly taboo, don't they? Like they never look at things that are enshrined within culture, but which are themselves massively immoral.
Yeah.
So they will allow for things like, for example, certain things that occur in Tolkien or that occur in C.S. Lewis's work. They will allow for that because it's normalized.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
Exactly.
problem.
Because but then God forbid that any of us plebs,
Hmm.
as I say, and it is disproportionately queer, female,
Yeah.
neurodivergent, or some kind of, often dealing with trauma or other issues like that. We're not allowed to explore things like that
No,
because that
no.
makes you a deviant. That
That makes
makes
you a
you
deviant.
disgusting.
But that's
Or they throw the word freak around a lot, and I hate that because that's the word that that got thrown at me when I was bullied at
right.
school. Freak was that was their favourite word. And I
Right.
just look at it and I go, actually, this is bullying. This is bullying all over
Yeah.
again. You're just bullying people for being interested in things that you're not.
Right, right. That is really bizarre. I mean, I would have thought that the term freak would have been reclaimed by this
Yeah.
point. I kind of reclaim it, It's like,
Oh, I totally
yeah,
reclaim it. I wear it with
totally.
pride, and I won't let 16-year-old Americans on Twitter, tell me that being a freak is a bad thing. I don't really
Right.
care. I'm too old for that shit now.
Totally.
But there are young people that I'm seeing in fandom that are being convinced, like, there's a particular type of discourse where it's like, if you're into, okay, so JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, there's a popular ship between a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old, right?
Right, got you.
So we're dealing with teenagers. As we know, 15-year-olds and 18-year-olds can and do
Yep.
routinely get into relationships and can and do routinely have sex. It is a thing that
Hmm.
happens in real life. Whether you like it or not, it is a thing that
It
happens
does
in real life.
happen, yeah.
You know, also these characters happen to be in the mafia, so it's not like we're dealing with,
Right.
sweet little high school kids. But the amount of vitriol levelled at people who ship this,
Right.
completely fictional, but not the creator who deliberately insinuates a relationship between them.
Uh-huh.
That's fine, that's okay. But if people write fan fiction or draw fan art, it's and then you get this kind of interesting phrase that I've seen where young people who do like this are being accused of grooming themselves.
Right, that's really strange.
Isn't that the
That's
most terrifying thing? The idea of grooming yourself. So then,
right.
subsequently, the idea is that I've seen is that if you then get picked on by a sexual predator,
Hmm.
you've groomed yourself. So in some way, it was your own fault.
Right. Oh, so there's like an almost like victim blaming element
Yes,
of it, which is, oh,
it's horrifying.
yeah.
Firstly, grooming yourself is not a thing.
It's not a
It's not a
thing.
thing.
No, it is not a
Secondly,
thing. I
it
mean,
does not matter what fan fiction you consume, what media you consume, what ships. It's all fictional for a start, for fuck's
hmm
sake. But you are never to blame for
no.
falling victim to a predator. Never, ever, ever, ever.
And it doesn't matter like what you do in that regard. You know, if you are like sexually precocious, for example, which a lot of kids are,
They are.
it's
Whether you
like,
like it or not, teenagers are having sex, and they're
right.
often having sex with people who are older than them.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and again, I mean, you look at queer culture and it does happen, you
It,
know?
uh,
There,
more so in queer culture,
yeah.
absolutely, because I suppose if you want to to coin a phrase, the pool is smaller, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is. And also there is this tendency, I mean, it's not so much of a problem now, but there is this tendency because of the exclusionary nature of general culture. You seek out like a mentor, you know, you seek out someone
Yes.
who knows, who has experience to teach you what it is and how it
Yeah.
functions. You know what I mean? All of my
Yeah. I mean,
partners have been older. All of my
yeah.
partners have been older. You know, that's what I go for. You know.
You have that kind of queer elder
Hmm.
kind of role, don't you?
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
is a thing. It is very much a thing, particularly of our generation where you didn't have
Hmm.
the internet and you didn't have the
Right.
networks you do now and the kind of support. So you did seek out,
Right.
queer elders, I guess, to coin a phrase,
Yeah. I
to
mean, actually,
help
come
show
to
you
think
the
of it,
way.
all of my partners have been a lot older.
Yeah.
But you
How
know.
is that a bad thing if you're
Right.
consenting to it and you're aware of that? How is that problematic in the
Yeah.
slightest?
It never has been. I mean, it's like
No.
what I do find interesting is I'm approaching that point now where there are a lot of like the queer younger people find me. I'm approaching daddy stage. Let's put it that way. I'm approaching the point where I'm being referred to as a daddy. You know, it's like no, don't call me that.
That's a compliment these days,
It is, it is.
I know what
I
you mean.
know, but like,
I know what you
it's
mean.
it's such a strange thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I would never have thought that like it's kind of flattering, you know. It's
Yeah.
flattering to get messages from younger guys who say who find you attractive, but it's not. And it's I feel kind of sad saying to them sometimes like. I'm really sorry, but I'm not interested
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I don't find youth attractive. For
Yeah.
my personally, I've never found youth attractive. It's just not something I like, you know.
That's totally valid.
You
That's
know,
totally valid. Yeah.
I like
But
older
then I've
guys.
seen. So you're obviously not problematic. Then you're fine. It's
Yeah.
you're problematic. It makes me sad because it is often, it is queer youth eating themselves,
Hmm.
and we've got She-Ra, we've got this
Right.
media that we can look to, and
And
stuff.
so much else as well. I mean, like you've
And
got
yeah, much else.
She-Ra, you've got Adventure Time, which is so queer affirming. You've got
Yeah,
Steven
definitely.
Universe, which is basically just like the queer kid show, isn't it? It's the archetype, really.
Yeah.
Um,
And at a time, particularly right now, where and we've discussed this at length many
mhm.
times, but where particularly being trans is like a battleground.
Right, right,
Why are
yeah.
we fighting ourselves? We need
Yeah.
to band together more than ever.
I mean, this is a problem as well in gay culture where you've got like, because there has been some ground made where there has been some cultural acceptance, now there is this awful kicking down where you've got
Yeah,
gay people who dislike trans people or will join those who were traditionally our enemies
yeah,
using the same spurious logic and arguments that were used against us. I I find
yeah.
that
Yeah.
bizarre.
I hate it. I hate it so much. And I hate the co-opting. Because I have a lot of lesbian friends who equally hate the co-opting of lesbianism as a pretext.
Hmm.
We get the pretext that lesbians need to be protected in order to, from trans women, and
Oh, for
my lesbian friends don't want that kind of
right.
protection.
It's the same with like the notion. There is this horrible rhetoric going around, this narrative that like somehow trans people are intruding on like gay men and gay women's spaces, or on
Yeah.
women's spaces if you're a trans woman. It's like, oh my god, it's first of all, it's insincere.
Yes, it
It's
isn't.
totally insincere when people utilize that rhetoric. They don't care about that. They
No,
absolutely don't
they
care
don't care
about
about
that.
lesbians. They
Of
don't
course
care
they
about.
don't. These are the same people who've spent like the last several decades trying to get rid of us.
Yeah, exactly.
But the fact that there are like gay men and women who join in,
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing as like when you get the kind of biphobic strand of
yes,
gay men and women, and I've seen this a lot as a bi person as well. It's the
yes,
whole. So I remember talking to a former, I say a former, a friend of mine who was lesbian, and she wouldn't date bi women. And I remember when asking her why, she said because you don't live female-centered lives.
What?
And I remember thinking that was a really weird, almost the idea that you can be tainted by men.
Bizarre.
Which is very strange. And I think it all comes from the same root. I think it's almost like, I don't know, I don't understand it myself.
I don't either. I find that
you
really
don't live
strange.
women-centered lives. And I'm like, well, there are plenty of bi women out there that have never been with a man, because for choice or circumstance or whatever. Equally, when I was growing up, the reason, I met a man and I married a man, but it was easier for me to meet men than it was to meet women when I was that age. So who knows what my life could have been like if I'd been growing up now. Maybe it'd be the same, maybe it'd be different.
Maybe
I don't
it would have been
know,
different.
but...
Yeah, I mean, you get a similar thing from like gay men there's so many gay men I know who refuse to date bi people, and
because the idea that they'll all, that you're always going to leave me for the but that's
it.
not what being bi is about.
That's exactly what they say. That is exactly what they say, and I'm sort of like, that is such a bizarre thing.
I mean, I've been in a monogamous relationship for 17 years, and I've never left him for a woman yet. So maybe I'm doing it wrong, but
apparently so.
Such a weird thing.
Again, I don't believe it when they say stuff like that. I don't think that's the reason. I don't think that's the reason. I think it's a tribal thing.
It is. Yes, I do think you're totally right. I think it's us and them, and I do think that you've got a with these gender critical. So okay, I'm gonna espouse a theory here, and I think I may have said this before, but I think there's a certain group of cisgender women who are maybe middle class, white, privileged, who don't like the fact that they have gained more. And I'm not saying women are equal, it's still a way to go, but they don't like the fact that they have gained more rights recently, and that means that there are people who are more oppressed than them. And I feel like it's a pulling up of the ladder.
Yeah.
Because they want to maintain their status quo as being the most oppressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why also you'll find that this particular group of women who call themselves gender non-conforming or whatever it is they call themselves, sorry, not gender non-conforming, gender critical.
Gender critical, yeah.
Often will balk at subjects such as race as well, because they don't like to acknowledge that there is a divide, that being a woman and being a woman of colour or a woman of an ethnic minority is a very different experience to being a middle-class white woman and, infinitely more oppressed. I do think it is that because women have gained ground, and those particular women, white middle-class cisgender women have gained a lot of ground, and they don't want to relinquish hold on that kind of
right. So there's almost like an identity crisis.
I think so. I think it is tribalism. It's we are more oppressed than you.
Yeah.
Because this is the rhetoric that gets trotted out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Women are the most oppressed in all situations. You cannot come into a woman's space because women are all men are threats and all women are vulnerable to threats. Regardless of where the intersectionality comes into this.
Right.
Because God forbid we should talk about how white women weaponise white womanhood against black men, for example.
Right.
God forbid we should have that conversation. It's the idea that we are the most oppressed in all scenarios, and I find that deeply suspicious.
Yeah, it's almost, it's ironically a kind of anti-feminism that's marketing itself as hyper-feminism, isn't it? It's really strange.
It's really sickening, and I hate this. Again, as somebody who doesn't want children, who's never wanted children, I do not want to be defined by my womb and my reproductive system. But the idea that you can only be a real woman because you bear children or because you have periods,
Right.
trans women don't know what it's like to have children. They don't know what it's like to menstruate. So fucking
So
what?
fucking what? Yeah,
So
absolutely.
fucking what? I take the contraceptive pill because I don't want to have children. I haven't had a period in 5 years. Does that make me not a woman?
Does that exactly? Does that make you?
Well, I'm
What
not.
about women for what
It's
for?
beside the point. But you know what I mean. My,
What about
I think it
women
was
for like medical reasons? I
what,
mean,
what were we not trying to push past biological essentials? Women
right.
are bearers of children. Women are the ones who have periods. We were trying to push past that, and now
Hmm.
we've brought us back to that. The idea that you can only identify a woman because she has breasts or a
Right.
uterus, or because she has periods, or because she has children. Bullshit. We
Bullshit. I mean,
Bullshit. We were moving past that. We'd got to a place where we'd kind of finally detached the notion of womanhood from biological essentialism, and it was better
right.
for everybody. And why the hell are we trying to push it back there?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It really is strange. And I, what really annoys me about it is that it sets us all against one another,
It
and
does.
then it means we can't make a concerted push against patriarchy itself. You know?
Exactly. When we're fighting each other, the real enemy is out there. Called,
Hmm.
and don't let's not pretend that the real enemy isn't the one behind all this anyway. Because look at all these gender critical people are in bed with. It's always
Yeah.
things like fundamentalist Christians and
Yeah.
right wingers. They
Hmm.
are the ones that are deliberately setting this up so that we do fight each other and
Yeah.
we do eat
It's
ourselves.
totally true. It's totally true.
It's so transparent. And I see people I care about and respect deeply falling for this rhetoric, and they're otherwise reasonable people who can see racism where racism exists, and they can see misogyny where it exists,
Hmm.
but they can't see this.
Yeah.
They can't see transphobia, and it just makes me
And
cross.
it's ironic, isn't it? Because like trans people are almost certainly the most misunderstood of all of these
Absolutely.
demographics. They
Absolutely.
are the smallest and most diffuse of all these demographics,
Yeah.
and they are the ones that suffer the most violence.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know,
black trans women
it's
in the US, the rate at which they are killed is
is
horrific.
terrifying. Yeah, it would be considered like an epidemic, would it
It's a
not?
you could argue that it is a type of genocide.
Yeah,
Honestly, it really is.
yeah.
And then you get the whole so trans women are treated with violence and trans men are treated with this horribly patronising. Oh, they're lesbians who've gone astray.
Right, right.
Elliot. I don't know if you saw recently Elliot Page. He's had top surgery recently,
Hmm.
hasn't he? And he showed a picture where he's by the pool and he's in
Hmm.
swimming trunks and he looks fantastic. But more
Right,
importantly,
God
he looks so
Almighty, the
happy.
the amount like so fit looking, you know?
He looks so happy as well. He just looks, and I'm thrilled for him. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely thrilled for him. And all these people, this poor lesbian who's been led astray and who's mutilated. I'm not going to use the wrong pronouns, but who's mutilated himself and all of this. I'm just leave him
Just
alone. He's
leave him
happy.
alone, for God's
He's
sake.
happy. But they want to push this narrative that they like to call it being trans, don't they? That any gender non-conforming children are being
And they're
trans.
being
Well,
transed. Yeah, it's
yeah,
like,
trans. Well,
oof.
I'm not being funny, but if that were true, there'd be a hell of a lot more
Yeah.
out there. But I know plenty of tomboys who are
Hmm.
still quite happily cisgender. It's
Yeah.
just absolute bollocks. I'm being brought a cup of tea. That's nice.
That's
Thank
lovely.
you. I think is that a sign that I'm talking too much that you brought me some tea. Yes.
Superb.
Yeah, I'm recording, but it's fine. George can. We can keep this bit in if you want.
Brilliant.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll probably not much longer. No, it's fine. It's fine. George loves Transformers, by the way. And
Yeah,
he's
love
at
them.
TF Nation. So yeah,
Yeah.
talks about Transformers. Rob is the biggest Transformers nerd. He collects. You are a very big
I
Transformers
know
nerd.
the biggest one. The biggest one is Chris McFeely, and I know him
Oh, Chris
personally.
McFeely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you're not quite on Chris McFeely's scale, are
Yeah.
you? But you're getting there.
He is the biggest. I can tell you.
You're a comfortable nerd niche, nerd level. Yeah. No, medium nerd. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. He got me into Matimata, so I credit him
Brilliant.
for that. Yeah. Sorry.
No worries at all.
Yeah, well, I won't be much longer, Rob, don't worry.
Always happy to meet like a fellow Transformers fan. Always.
Yeah, well, he got me. He's the reason I got into it in the first place. He was like, read this comic, and I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I liked Transformers as a kid. I liked the show, but that's kind of where it began and end. And I was
Yeah.
I want to read a comic about robots, and he was like, no, seriously, just read it. So I read, well, the rest is history. But I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, I mean, those comics, like, they are the kind of things where I've seen people who have no interest in Transformers, like, whatsoever. They've got no connection to them, like, from their childhoods, but they've read More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light, and
Yeah.
just gone nuts. Gone nuts for them.
I mean, it's so good.
That
I
Megatron.
mean, I don't know if we ever done an episode of this on More Than Meets the Eye.
We
I
haven't
feel like
yet,
we
no.
have.
I mean, there's a couple of people who have been on who have said this exact thing, where we've realised that we've all read it, and we've sort of all
Yeah.
you get is the same thing, which is just this fangasming. Basically, it's sort of like, oh, it's so good. We've got to do an episode. Yeah, what we'll have to do, we'll have to see if we can gather together everyone
Yes.
and see if
Oh,
we
that'd
can
be
do
so
an
good.
episode about it. And I'll see if I can get Chris on,
Oh, I'd love that. That'd be very cool.
because I know Chris quite well. He's
Yeah.
from before his Transformers the Basics days, you know. I know him quite well. He's
Yeah.
a lovely guy.
That would be very
Chris.
cool.
He's very cool. But what he doesn't know, I think that doesn't mean anything, because there isn't anything he doesn't know about Transformers. But what he doesn't know isn't worth knowing, you know.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I'd love to flap with people about Transformers. It's just, that was. It's funny because for years, I talk about fan fiction. I hadn't written fan fiction in a long time, and then that came along, and it was just the story kind of gripped me so much. I was like, I need to write about this. It's so good. It rekindled my love for the form, I guess. So
Yeah,
I owe it a lot.
I must admit, I've been out of like the comics for quite a while when More Than Meets the Eye came along. It's just not for any particular reason. It just hadn't like had time. But when I think I was at TF Nation, and it may have been Chris actually, someone gave me a copy of one of the comics and said, "No, read it."
Yeah.
Sort of like, "No, read it. Seriously, read
That's
it."
literally always the way it is. No one gives you any context or
Nope.
any kind of, no justification. It's literally, no, just believe
yeah,
me, just read it.
just read it. And it was
And
like,
that's how I voiced it on people as well.
Yeah.
I'm just honestly, just trust me on this. Just read.
it's the weirdest thing. Like tonally, it's so strange. It's like Red Dwarf
Yes.
meets like Battlestar Galactica. It's so
Yeah.
weird.
I made the Red Dwarf connection instantly. I think that was what really made me fall in love with it, the Red Dwarf sort of humour. Because
Yeah.
let's be honest, Thundercracker is Ace Rimmer, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
literally Ace Rimmer. What a guy! It's
Totally.
literally him.
Yeah.
It's so.
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely, and the fact that it establishes that because the robots that were left on Cybertron were largely, they're not male because there's no such thing, but they're male coded.
Yeah.
So therefore, Cybertron is a culture of millennia-long homoromanticism.
Yes, it is, and that is just again, it's not remarkable. It is just the way that
It's just the way things are. I just love the fact that they
It's so
established
good.
that. It's so funny. I love
I mean,
it.
obviously you get that wham moment, don't you, with Chrome Dome and Rewind after Rewind is jetted off into that sword. And when I was reading that issue, I remember this vividly. I was reading the comic, and Rob kept looking at me while I was reading it. I was like, "What's the matter?" I said, "No, it's fine, nothing." So I'm reading it, and it gets to that bit, and obviously Rewind gets jetted off, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is awful." And then that message played, and I threw the comic across the room.
Yeah.
Literally threw it across the room, and he just burst out laughing because he knew exactly what I'd read.
He knew the moment. Yes,
Yeah.
he knew the moment.
And I was like, I can't believe you just did that, you absolute bastard.
Bastard, yeah. Yeah. Because it is.
Sorry, go on.
It just is that moment, isn't it?
It
It's
is,
just like...
yeah, and this is the thing, like, to take it back to She-Ra, because we did kind of...
Yeah, yeah. Ostensibly, the episode is about She-Ra.
Yeah. But they could, I kind of thought it might go that way.
Yeah, I imagined, right up until the end, I imagined that they were going to leave it like implied, the relationship between Catra and Adora,
and maybe kind of kill Catra off and kind of save. I thought that she'd do a self-sacrificing redemption arc.
That's what I was thinking, like particularly towards the end, when they've got the whole sort of Heart of Etheria activating and it's all going wrong. Yeah, I thought there was going to be something like that, or maybe even you'd have Adora and Catra disappearing, and then Etheria being saved,
Yeah.
And then it all being a big mystery, like, so what happened to them? Well, they saved Etheria, but no, it actually does. It does the happy ending, but does it so well.
Yeah, it really does.
It,
I like the way that everybody gets a
everybody
happy ending
gets
as
it.
well. Yeah,
Everybody gets what they deserve at the end of this, and I loved that. I loved it because the characters are so likable. I wanted them to,
yeah,
you really want them to, and the relationship between Catra and Adora is so good. I'm so pleased that they actually
yeah,
did it. They went there with it,
yeah. And it's like not even no subtext,
No,
text, straight up. They are in love.
they are in love,
That
and
is the story.
it's romantic, it's physical,
Yeah,
this is the basis for this entire story.
yeah.
I
And that is
loved
a
it.
good thing. It's
Yeah.
not depicted as harmful or it's a good thing. It's something that we should be celebrating. We
Yeah.
should be happy about.
And it's not even made a big deal of, it's not like it doesn't portray it in this way where it's like it is just the way it is, because that's the natural arc that they were
Yeah.
following all the way through.
Well, I would have been shocked if they hadn't. Okay, I was surprised that they did it in as explicit a way
Yeah.
as they did, but I would have been surprised if it didn't end in that way.
Yeah.
At least in a subtext kind of
Yeah,
way. But the fact that
definitely.
they just went all out and did it, it's fantastic. I'm
Yeah,
totally.
so it is a physical relationship. It's a
Yeah.
romantic relationship, and I
They get to
loved
kiss
that.
on screen.
Yes,
They
yes.
actually get. It's not just like we love each other from afar. No,
No.
they get the romantic moment. They get the kiss.
It's
Great.
the ultimate healing moment,
Yeah.
After everything, it's the ultimate healing moment, and it kind of. I mean, I know that there won't be any more of this, but it's that wonderful bit of storytelling where it implies a wider universe where things go on after.
Yeah.
And I would love to know. I would love to see. I would love to see just like a little domestic thing where you see what happened to the characters, like what happened with Entraptor and Hordak, and
Yeah.
even Hordak gets his nice ending at the end. I
He
was just
does,
like,
and I'm
yay,
glad.
yay! So pleased,
And
so
of
pleased.
course, we haven't mentioned him yet, but Wrong Hordak.
Wrong Hordak is the best thing.
I love Wrong Hordak so much.
Wrong Hordak is like, I mean, can I just throw out like my favorite episode ever is the one
Go on.
where he's having his existential crisis over the radio.
Yes.
And all you can hear is Entraptor is talking to the rest of them over the radio system. Is Wrong Hordak in the background shrieking about how he's lost his connection to Horde Prime, and how Horde Prime is not the almighty being that he thought he was. I loved it.
He's so good. He's
I
so
loved
good. Yeah,
it.
and I love that he has that kind of friendship with Entraptor as well. The kind of mirroring Hordak.
Yeah.
Even though he's Wrong Hordak, she's still, him making friends with Emily and stuff like that. It was just. Because they could have just abandoned him, they could have left him, but they were like,
They could.
no, we'll keep him as well.
Let's make him a character. Let's make him a character. It's almost like it is the redemptive arc for the real Horde character, isn't it? The one who is almost irredeemable.
It kind of goes to show that everybody could be redeemed in
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
he is literally just a faceless Horde character.
Right. I mean, he was created to be like a
He's a clone,
faceless
there's nothing.
clone,
Yeah. They could have just killed him and had it done with, or abandoned it, but no, he becomes part of the team. It's great.
I loved it. I loved it to bits. That he is a funny character. He is a comic foil. He is really damn funny. I like it after he's turned on the Horde, and then they use him to infiltrate like Horde-controlled areas, but he's very bad at it.
He's not particularly I'm very fun. I like that he kind of, when he starts cooking for people, and he's not very good at it. But...
It's so funny, and like the way he talks to his Horde brothers, in a way that's very unlike a Horde Prime clone.
Yeah, he's very sweet. I like him a lot.
I mean, the other thing that I noticed this time round is I loved the relationship between Micah and Glimmer. Especially after he's chipped.
Yes.
And he
Yes.
becomes like the ultimate dark wizard, really threatening, really kind of nasty and slightly like abusive almost.
And it's shocking because we only just get Micah back at this point.
Right, of
We
course.
thought he was dead this whole time.
Yeah, and Glimmer hasn't even seen him
No,
up
that's
until
right,
this
yeah.
point. She hasn't even really met him. And when the first time she meets him again, it's this really dark, violent conflict.
Yeah. And that comes on the kind of the heels of him. That episode where he's trying to bond with Froster.
Yeah.
And he just keeps getting it wrong. He's
Yeah.
treating him like a kid. That kind of awkward, the awkward dad vibes.
Yeah,
that he's
trying
got
way
going
too
on.
hard. Way too
Yeah.
hard.
And then to see him kind of switch the way that he does and not get that same moment with Glimmer until
Yeah.
much, much later on it's quite heartbreaking.
It's kind of sad, and also he's really threatening when he's under the control of Horde Prime.
He's very dangerous, yeah.
Very dangerous, like maybe the most dangerous character in the whole
Yeah.
thing. Which I loved, and Mike is really hot. Actually, Mike is the kind of guy I'd be going for in this show. To be honest,
He's definitely a dilf, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. He's got everything I like. He's got the beard and everything.
Yeah. The kind of the Silver Fox vibes going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like him a lot. And he's fun as well.
He is, yeah. And I think for Glimmer as well. Obviously, she loses Angela in
Of course.
series 3, isn't it?
Yeah.
That she loses. So the possibility of losing another parent that she's only just realised is still there.
Right.
There's very high stakes for her.
Yeah, I loved. I mean, the sacrifice of Angela was great.
It was very good.
Because she, up until that point, she had been, not deliberately so, but a very negative parental figure.
Yeah, because she's obviously very protective and understandably so.
Very
she
protective.
doesn't want Glimmer to get her. 'Cause,
Demurring.
she's already lost her husband, so...
Right. And also, I mean, she, along with all of the other parental figures, most of the parental figures are either negative or they are passive.
Yes, that's right.
They always have to be saved by the kids, in this
Yeah.
show, which I think is a brilliant dynamic.
Yeah.
It just sort of empowers the younger characters who are all the revolutionaries. They're the ones who are starting it off.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, they get that whole bit in I forget which series it is, where when the princesses kind of band together because their parents' generation wouldn't.
They won't. Yeah, they're too afraid. Yeah, they're just too afraid. And also, they're all sealed away and isolated in their own little kingdoms and think that they're okay.
Yeah. Until they realise that they have to,
Right.
When their kingdoms go down, they go down one by one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have to kind of band together. They have to join forces just to make sure that to keep everyone safe.
And it's the kids who remind them of that, and I love that. And often, and there is real conflict there as well. Like the parents get really angry and sometimes quite nasty about it. I mean, there's certainly Angela does.
Yeah, but it's never from a place of a horrible place, because you can understand exactly why Angela is as protective as she is.
Totally.
It's never that she doesn't believe in Glimmer. It's never that she doesn't want Glimmer to be brave. She doesn't want to lose her.
That's it. Yeah, it's
frightened.
It's from a good place. It's just manifesting in a negative way.
And you're allowed to see both sides of that, aren't you?
Totally. And of course, she gets her redemption arc ultimately because she does what she has to do.
Yes.
It's very dark.
And then she trusts Glimmer.
Yeah.
Finally, it's like, I trust you to do this without me, to do what you think is right.
Yeah.
As you say, in this kind of terribly final way.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, it is phenomenally sad that it's come to that. That it comes to that, and for it to happen to Glimmer as well. Who is kind of an innocent character,
She's kind of the heart, like her and Bo are both kind of the heart of the team, aren't they? Glimmer, and then she spends the whole kind of series 4 kind of having to come to terms with being in charge, but also everybody, deferring to She-Ra instead of her. And that kind of that conflict was well done, I thought.
I thought that was brilliant. After having lost her mother, of course, and her father, so she was in a really bad place, and I loved that. I loved the fact that was the dynamic we went into season 5 with. Where Glimmer was taken, she didn't really know if she was ever going to get to see them again, and she had authored the events that had brought the Horde to Etheria.
Yeah, because the whole thing where she kind of drifted towards Shadow Weaver,
of course.
The kind of loneliness she felt and the brokenness she felt. It's all totally believable, and you can't even though she did the wrong thing ultimately, you can't be too angry with her because you understand why she did that.
Oh my God, yeah. And of course, I mean, she must be just sick of everything. She
Yeah,
must,
well, understandably.
totally. At that point, if there was a solution, you know, to end this ridiculous conflict, then yeah, that had claimed so much from her, then I can
Yeah,
totally see why she'd want to do it.
yeah.
And of
She's
course,
a great
Shadow
character.
Weaver, being the character she is, she would see that crack. Oh, just
Yeah, I mean,
immediately.
she's a shark, isn't she?
Yeah,
Sniffing blood.
totally. Yeah, she would see that and know exactly what. And of course, she does. She knows exactly what to
Yeah,
say in order to push it a particular way.
yeah. And she does. She's
Hmm?
very successful.
Yeah, I do love that version of Shadow Weaver. I've got to say, I think she's
Oh, I
brilliant.
think she's fantastic. She's so, so good. You know, and the fact that she does. I'm not usually a fan of redemption through death, but
Hmm.
I think with Shadow Weaver, I think it was the only thing that made sense.
Yeah, I think it's the only way because she had been such a negative force up until
Yeah.
that point.
And I
It's
think she was so broken within herself as
yeah.
well. You know, again, too broken to be redeemed is not a favourite trope of mine.
Hmm.
But with Shadow Weaver, it wasn't necessarily that she'd been broken. You know, there was a degree of being broken by other people, but I think it
Hmm.
was also just by doubling down
Yeah,
constantly on her own mistakes,
yeah.
you know,
And it was
and damaging
it's
other people the way that she did.
she'd got to the point whereby she only knew one way of
Yeah,
working in the world, which was by manipulating people
yeah.
ultimately.
And I don't think she could learn any other way of being.
No.
Not, and I think she could have reconciled with.
Yeah, it's such a shame really because there's this whole politics between her and Micah and Glimmer's
Castor
aunt,
Speller.
the Caster Speller,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's so sad. I mean, it is somewhat resolved in Series 5 because you do get a slight healing between her and Caster Speller,
You do. That's right. Yeah.
which is
I mean,
nice to see.
she could have survived, but I think it was done well
Yeah,
at the very least. You know, the fact that she was able to kind of heal the wound between her and Catra and her and
yeah.
Adora. You know, that the way that that
She
happened.
became the maternal figure that she should have been ultimately,
Yeah,
at the
she
end,
did.
and
Yeah,
that.
it's all about thematically, isn't it? It's all about parents making way for their
Yeah,
children.
ultimately, yes, it is about parents like getting out of the way
Yeah,
ultimately for their children to put right the mistakes that they made. I mean,
exactly. And that was exactly what Shadow Weaver did.
yeah, yeah, it's I mean there is almost like an environmentalist theme going on
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
isn't there, you
totally,
know?
totally.
It's a subtle one. It's actually done really, really well. But it is definitely there.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, it's so multi-layered. You could literally sit here all day, kind of like picking through the layers of it. It's
Right, and it's
it's
such a
so well
weird thing
done.
to say, isn't it? Because it is a funny cartoon. You know, it's big, it's bright, it's glaring very often. It's got these wonderful like slapstick moments, and it's kind of kooky at times, and it is ultimately a children's cartoon, but there is
Yeah,
so much going on.
but like we said before, it's a children's cartoon that doesn't patronise
Yeah.
children, and that's what makes it, so compelling.
Yeah, that's what makes it what it is, and I mean, comparisons to the original She-Ra it just doesn't even, it can't. There is no comparison. They are
No,
totally different shows with completely different intentions. But if in terms of like technicals, you just can't. I'm sorry. There's the 1980s one ultimately just cannot hold a candle to it.
no, absolutely not. I mean, for a multitude of reasons, but also I think ultimately because the 1980s wasn't ready for it yet,
Yeah, absolutely so.
unfortunately.
Absolutely so. I mean, I appreciate the original for what it was,
Yeah,
for what it did at the time. I
yeah.
enjoyed it when I was a kid, you know.
It was fun, but it wasn't doing anything
No, it's not
really.
saying anything to you of
No.
any great import, which is ironic because She-Ra and He-Man they were some of those awful cartoons that had like the packaged morals at the end.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, the kids, it's bad to steal.
Right. They're
Have nothing
not
to do with the episode, but
right, yeah, they're not good enough to actually show you teach you the moral in the episode or in the
No,
writing.
exactly. They just have to throw it in at the end in a really
Right.
blatant kind of in-your-face
Yeah,
way.
where you've literally got She-Ra or Man-at-Arms or He-Man talking at the screen.
Yeah. Listen, kids, stealing is not cool. Well, oh god.
Oh god. Oh
Again,
god.
patronising children ultimately.
Yeah. Did you ever see when you were young? Did you see like the follow what came after He-Man, Brave Star?
I knew of it. I never watched it.
That is ripe for a comeback. That is in this style.
I would not be surprised. I think there's a lot of
Oh god, that would be so good.
what's the word? Properties or franchise, whatever you want to call them, that I think will come back around now. Especially, there is apparently He-Man is
Yes.
in the works, right?
Have you seen the artwork?
I'm tentatively very excited.
It looks really good, doesn't it? I mean,
It does look really good.
The redesigns are beautiful. I love the look of Skeletor. I mean, from what I understand, this is not anything to do with this She-Ra. Like, this is a totally removed, different thing. So this
Which I think it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but wouldn't it be wonderful if this does for like what was classically the boys' side of the franchise for what the Netflix She-Ra has done for the girls' side, where it kind of undoes or lampoons some of the elements of the original.
I hope so.
I would love to see that. I really would. I mean, did you ever see the 2002 He-Man?
I did, yes. Yeah.
That's very, very good.
It's actually quite enjoyable, isn't it? I was surprised.
Bad at all. I mean,
I was surprised.
It's a really fun cartoon. It's got all of the silliness and the doofiness and the campery that made the original one so much fun.
And that's what I'm hoping is intact. I hope they keep the campery, because I don't think you can do He-Man without the campery.
No, I don't either.
It would feel wrong.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even like as threatening as Skeletor was in the 2002 one, he was still kind of funny.
Yeah, and he was. Oh, sorry, my cat is trying to sit on me. I think he's telling me it's time to stop now. Sorry, baby.
As they do. I'm sure mine is staring at me from somewhere around here, saying time to go to bed now.
Well, he does every night. He comes to bed with me, so I think this is a please, mother.
Yeah. This is a strange break with protocol here. What's going on?
Yes, what's happening? Yeah. I would take that as my cue then.
Yes, I mean, with regards to the He-Man, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait.
I will, given how successful the She-Ra reboot was, I will. Yeah, I'm up for it.
Quietly hopeful about that one.
So.
And for those of you who haven't yet seen the Netflix She-Ra, even if you think you probably won't like it, go and check it out.
You will.
Really, go and check it out. I mean, and give it several episodes, let it build up steam, and you'll start to realize that this is actually a really clever, well-written, very well-conceived piece of work.
I completely agree. Give it a chance. Give it a go.
Yep.
It's not just for kids.
Definitely not. With that being said, Laura, do you have anything that you'd like to pimp out while you're here?
Yeah, I had a novella that came out in December. It's called On the Shoulders of Otava. It's about Finnish folklore and bear myths, but it's also about the Finnish Civil War in 1918. It's about girls with guns.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Highly recommended. And I do believe there may be an episode in which we have a chat about that at some point.
That would be cool.
That would be great. I'd love to talk to you about that one at some point. As for myself, my loves, you can find me knocking about here on Exaggerated Elegy. And if you want to have a look at any of my published fiction, you can find links over at strangeplaygrounds.com. And there'll be a new short story collection coming out relatively soon, Born in Blood Volume 2. So that should be fun. Looking forward to that. And if you fancy a chat, come and chat to me over at Twitter at Enigmatic Elegy. Laura, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. And I look forward to having you on again.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, guys.